Chapter 437. Qin Wanru had been dreaming. The intermittent scenes in the dream were very messy and seemed to have no connection. The final scene was the scene where Chu Luchen stood on the Dan K and looked at her. Her body was stiff and twisted, strangely broken into two parts, and there was blood in front of her. In the blood, there was a strange voice calling her, Shuozhuo. Shuozhuo, the voice was painful and desperate, as if something was destroying the world. She suddenly sat up from the bed, sweating and staring at a place in the air. It seemed that even the air was flowing with blood. That was the place where she died in her last life. Shuozhuo, are you okay? Are you uncomfortable? A caring and anxious voice came to her ears. It was a real voice, not the desperate and strange voice in the dream that made her scalp numb. Turning her stiff neck, Qin Wanru looked to the side with difficulty and saw the anxious face of Rui, and great elder princess. Shuozhuo, are you okay? Do you want to ask the imperial physician to come and have a look? Grandma brought two imperial physicians back when she entered the palace. Rui, and great elder princess reached out to hold her hand, only feeling that her hand was cold and wet. Knowing that she was sweating, Rui, and great elder princess was so anxious that her face turned pale. Qin Wanru closed her eyes, calmed down, and opened them again. Then she saw clearly that the place in front of her was not the inner palace where her blood was spilled in the last life, nor did she hear anyone calling her so desperately. The corners of her mouth slightly raised, and she remembered everything before she fainted. Grandma, I'm okay. I just remembered something. Qin Wanru held Rui, and great elder princess's hand and said softly. The little girl was sweating, and her black hair was scattered casually. A few strands were still wet on her forehead. Her big watery eyes looked more and more pitiful. She didn't notice it when she didn't pay attention to it before, but now when she looked at it carefully, Rui, and great elder princess felt more and more distressed. This pair of eyes was 50% or 60% similar to her daughter's. Looking at it now, it was almost heartbreaking. Taking a handkerchief from the hand of the servant girl, Rui, and great elder princess helped Qin Wanru put a few strands of sweaty hair behind her ears and gently wiped the sweat on her forehead. She comforted her softly, don't be afraid. As long as Grandma is here, no one can do anything to you. Even if your surname is Xiao, at most you will take my surname if things go sour. Rui and great elder princess felt that if she had been tougher at that time, maybe Xiao Jiang could have been her son-in-law. In this way, there would not have been so many troubles, and her grandson and granddaughter could also follow her surname, and they would have nothing to do with the narrow-minded and partial old woman of Duke Xing's mansion. Of course, as for whether the heir of Duke Xing's mansion could be her son-in-law, Rui, and great elder princess thought it was a little difficult, but Xiao Jiang might be willing. But now, he could only think about it. Grandma, is my father fond of writing? Is my mother fond of gardening? Qin Wanru grabbed Rui, and great elder princess's hand and asked eagerly. Yes, the two of them have these hobbies. Speaking of her daughter and son-in-law, Rui, and great elder princess's eyes turned red. They were such a good couple, like a golden boy and a jade girl. Why did the cruel old woman dislike them so much and insist on driving them away, causing them to die early? For this point, Rui, and great elder princess felt that she would never get along with old madam of Duke Xing's mansion in this life. Was the first finger of my father's left hand injured? Is there a small red dot between my mother's eyebrows? Qin Wanru choked with sobs. In her 2 lives, she had never seen it so clearly as in the dream just now. Were the young couple with a little daughter her biological parents? Yes, it's them. How do you know? Rui, and great elder princess couldn't control her tears. At this moment, it seemed that their voices and smiles were beside her. Grandma, I just had a dream. Qin Wanru said softly with red eyes. The weak girl just sat on the bed with tears and sweat on her delicate little face, looking very pitiful. My daughter. Rui, and great elder princess reached out to hold Qin Wanru in her arms. After reaching out to pat her twice, she also shed tears. She became more and more resentful towards old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion. If it were not for her, her daughter and son-in-law would not have died, and such a lovely granddaughter would not have been wandering outside and suffered so much. Now even her biological parents could only see her in her dreams. She and old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion were irreconcilable. "Grandma, I'm fine." After silently crying for a while, Qin Wanru heard Rui, and great elder princess's low sobs. She reached out to pat Rui, and great elder princess's back gently and comforted her softly. In the previous life, Qin Yuru came in under her name before she officially recognized her ancestors. Of course, it was the same as this time. Qin Yuru didn't come in under the name of her father's biological daughter. Her maternal grandmother certainly didn't care about such things. But in the previous life, did Qin Yuru really not do anything to her grandmother? Her watery eyes became deep and sharp where Rui, and great elder princess could not see. She entered Duke Xing's mansion as a nominal relative, but always showed that she was her father's biological daughter. Rui, and great elder princess would definitely believe her and even send someone to check. In the last life, Qin Yuru had something that originally belonged to her. Even if grandma could not be sure, she would definitely think that it was very likely that she was her biological granddaughter. At this time, if Qin Yuru said or did something, Rui, and great elder princess would definitely not believe her. The matter of Rui, and great elder princess becoming a nun in the last life might have something to do with Qin Yuru. Without Hao, and Rui, and great elder princess, even if she knew her origin, it would be useless. Step by step. She killed all the people she relied on and all the relatives, and finally it was her turn. She figured out some things that she could not figure out. It was not that she did not want to kill her at once. Killing her was the real way to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. But she was afraid of attracting attention, so she pushed forward step by step and then let herself fall into hell forever. How vicious Madame of Duke Xing's chess game was, she had proved it with blood in the last life. Not only her blood, but also the blood of all her relatives. Good girl, it's good that you are okay. Grandma will protect you in the future. Rui, and great elder princess pushed Qin Wanru away and looked at her face. She found that although her face was pale, she had stopped crying at this time. Only the tear stains were still on her face, which made people feel more distressed. But she still had a smile on her face. That kind of delicate smile, which seemed to be broken by a touch, made Rui, and great elder princess feel more distressed. But she was also afraid that Qin Wanru would feel sad. After picking up a handkerchief and wiping her face, she hurriedly comforted her. At the same time, she motioned Nanny Gao to take a cushion and put it on for her personally. Then she helped her to lean down. Qin Wanru leaned back gently and obediently. She also took the handkerchief handed by Yujie and wiped her tears. Looking around, she asked, "Grandma, where is this?" This question annoyed Rui, and great elder princess. Her face darkened and she said angrily, "It's Duke Xing's mansion. I went to the palace and told the Empress Dowager and the Emperor that I would raise you by myself. The Emperor and the Empress Dowager wanted to investigate the cause of your father's death first to see if it was really an accident. You will be raised in Duke Xing's mansion and recorded in the family tree." Thinking of this, Rui, and great elder princess regretted why she did not let her daughter find a son-in-law at that time. Otherwise, she could even raise her granddaughter by herself. How could she rest assured about the cruel and unscrupulous people of Duke Xing's mansion? Didn't old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion say that she hated me before? Why does she want to raise me? Qin Wanru raised her eyebrows slightly and said in surprise. "Oh, how dare she say that she won't raise me? Cowardly and vicious." Rui, and great elder princess sneered coldly. Old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion was cowardly. The marriage between Qinghua and Xiaojiang was also the same. Since she didn't like it, she didn't have the courage to resist. But after Qinghua married into the mansion, she secretly tortured her. Thinking of this, Rui, and great elder princess became more and more worried. Would it be okay for her granddaughter to stay in Duke Xing's mansion? No, she had to send someone to watch over here. I will choose 4 old maids for you later. If someone is against you, directly ask them to go up and tie them up, and then ask someone to inform me to come over. I will see who dares to bully my granddaughter. Rui, and great elder princess, said angrily. At that time, it was Qinghua who refused her kindness, so that she didn't know that she was bullied in Duke Xing's mansion. Later, she couldn't bear it and left. This time, she would not let them play the same trick again. Thank you, Grandma. Qin Wanru nodded. She now lived in Duke Xing's mansion, and only Yujie could be used. The others were all unknown. She really needed a few friends around her. She would not stay in Duke Xing's mansion for a long time. In these days, she had to make a good plan and leave Duke Xing's mansion first. She was too young now and was too easy to be controlled. Grandma, when will they record me in the family tree? Qin Wanru asked. Before leaving, she had to record her name in the family tree. When she came back in the future, she would get back all the things they owed her. But now she had to clear her name. She would get back what she owed her and how. It should be during this period of time. Rui, and great elder princess, said listlessly. Thinking of the problem of the surname, she thought that her daughter had not married a son-in-law. Otherwise, this beloved granddaughter would have her surname. Grandma, can you ask them to open the ancestral temple and record me in the family tree as soon as possible? Qin Wanru thought for a while and said inconspicuously. This matter had to be done as soon as possible, and it would be easier to catch them off guard. So soon? Rui, and great elder princess, was surprised. Grandma, as soon as possible. Qin Wanru reached out and pulled Rui, and great elder princess's hand. Her small white hands were like jade, which made Rui, and great elder princess, feel more distressed. Okay, I will tell them later. If they don't agree, I will take you home and tell them that they don't want you to be recorded in the family tree. Rui, and great elder princess, stood up and said. Chapter 438. Rui, and great elder princess, left, leaving the 4 rough old maids at the door. Since her granddaughter asked her to hurry up, Duke Xing's mansion must hurry up. Otherwise, don't blame her for being rude. This was not what was said in the palace before. No matter where it was said, it was reasonable. Seeing Rui, and great elder princess, leave, Qin Wanru looked at Yujie beside her. Yujie understood and looked at the 4 rough old maids outside the door. Seeing that they were all very obedient, they just stood outside the door and kept a distance from the door. They could protect Qin Wanru and would not hear their conversation inside. They knew the rules. Miss, Qin Yu sent the news that first Miss and Child D will get married in a month. Yujie stepped forward and reported in a low voice. Qin Wanru had arranged everything before she fainted. Knowing that she might not be able to return to Qin's mansion for a while after today's event, she specially asked old Madam Qin to bring Qin Yu here. Then she told Qin Yu that she would move some things here. When she went back, she would still follow old Madam Qin. But if there was any trouble in Qin's mansion, she should immediately report to her. She did not expect that she would suddenly faint. Fortunately, Yujie and Qin Yu were both smart. Obviously, they had sent the news in. Tell me what happened. Qin Wanru asked lightly. According to the previous situation, it did not seem that they were going to get married immediately. In addition, the matter of Qin Yuru pretending to be Duke Xing's mansion had been exposed. Would Duke Yong's mansion be so determined to marry Qin Yuru at this time? Qin Yu said that after returning to the mansion, the general was furious and scolded First Mississippi. Then he went to see old grandma. After coming back, he invited Duke Yong and Child D over. I don't know what they talked in the study. It was a little late. He asked people to serve wine to entertain guests. Child D drank too much and went to rest. First Miss got the news and brought some soup to sober him up. Then they got together. Yujie reported in a low voice. This was a scandal. Qin's mansion was in chaos at that time. The general intended to break off the engagement with Duke Yong's mansion. But under the current situation, how could they break off the engagement? Not only could they not break off the engagement, but they had to get married as soon as possible. Miss, you don't know. When Child D left, he slapped First Miss and said that she did it on purpose. Yu Jie said with a smile. She was very happy to see that First Miss, who had schemed against her, was so unlucky. She was very happy to see that First Miss, who had schemed against her, was so unlucky. How could Di Yan, who had sobered up, not know that Di Yan, who had slapped him, must be angry and hateful? However, Qin Yuru had been reprimanded. According to the usual situation, she would be grounded no matter what. But this time, she was even able to give Di Yan a hangover soup. This was full of questions. Duke Yong Mansion Qin's Mansion Qin. On the one hand, it was because of Di Yan and Qin Yuru's relationship. On the other hand, it was also because of Qin Huayong. Qin Huayong was definitely involved in this matter. The Qin Song Qin Tian Song Qin Chen was Qin. In her previous life, when she was in such a miserable situation, Qin Huayong did not help her once. In this life, when Qin Yuru was in trouble, Qin Huayong immediately helped her. They were indeed biological children. Coldness flashed in Qin Wanru's eyes. Her eyelashes fluttered, leaving 2 rows of shadows on her eyes. Is there any news about Prince Cheng's mansion? After a pause, Qin Wanru looked up and asked. She took the tea from Yu Jie and took a sip. The tea was not hot, and it entered her mouth with a warm feeling, which made her hands and feet, which were wet and cold with sweat, slightly warm. So, she took 2 sips of the cup and put it back in Yu Jie's hand. Qin Yu said that what happened in Prince Cheng's mansion has been widely spread. In fact, it has been spread since last night. But First Miss had an accident at that time, and she even said that she saved the 3rd Madam of Duke Xing's mansion. She said it in a very euphemistic way, but today there are all kinds of rumors about First Mississippi. One said that she was engaged, but still dared to seduce Prince Cheng. The other said that she pretended to be a miss and wanted to become the lineal miss of Duke Xing's mansion. Yu Jie said happily. Today's rumor was spread by Chu Lu when she came back this morning. Early this morning, Miss had sent Chu Lu out to spread this rumor. Although at this time, it was too late for anyone to interfere. Qin Wanru smiled slightly. She was born beautiful. At this time, although she looked embarrassed, she had a kind of charm. Although she was still young, her description had a sense of beauty that could topple cities. Where is Chu Lu now? As Miss said, I asked Chu Lu to send a gift to the 3rd Madam after she came back. She said it was Madam Dowager's gift to express her apology for First Mississippi, Yu Jie said softly. Before Qin Wanru fainted, she had told several servant girls. Even if she fainted, things should be carried out in an orderly way. Chu Lu went to the 3rd Madam of Duke Xing's mansion not long after Qin Wanru fainted. Old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion and Madam of Duke Xing were both in the flower hall outside. No one cared about the things in the inner courtyard. No one expected that Qin Wanru would send someone to find the injured 3rd Madam at this time. It was a good time for Chu Lu to go there. At this time, the flower hall was in a mess. It was worse inside than outside. And the servant girls she sent there still didn't know what had happened. As for why she didn't send a gift yesterday, of course, it was because she was stopped by someone. It was said that the 3rd Madam was too seriously injured to see them. Thinking that she might be better today, she specially sent someone to see the 3rd Madam. When they were talking, Chu Lu came back. 4 rough old maids standing at the door immediately came forward to stop her. I want to see my Mississippi. Chu Lu thought that these 4 rough old maids were sent by old Madam of Duke Xing. She rolled her eyes and said with a smile. Since she was in Duke Xing's mansion, of course, she couldn't offend this old madam. Hearing the sound at the door, Yu Jie came out. Seeing Chu Lu being stopped, she hurriedly said to the 2 old maids at the door with a smile, Nannies, could you please let me in? This is Chu Lu, the personal servant girl of our Mississippi. She went back to Qin's mansion to get some clothes, so she is a little late. Hearing that she was Qin Wanru's personal servant girl, several old maids immediately made way for her. Chu Lu hurriedly came in to meet Yu Jie. They walked into the room together and said anxiously, "Has the miss woken up?" Chu Lu said anxiously as she walked. Now she also understood the identity of her father, so she was more attentive to Qin Wanru. How could she not be attentive to the master who had served this branch for 2 generations? "Don't worry, the miss has woken up," Yu Jie said with a smile. They went into the inner room together. Seeing Qin Wanru sitting on the bed Chu Lu breathed a sigh of relief. Although her face was slightly pale than before, she was still in good spirits. Chu Lu took 2 steps forward and bowed to Qin Wanru. Qin Wanru waved her hand, indicating that she did not need to bow. "Have you seen the madam of the 3rd branch?" Qin Wanru asked when she stood still again. "Don't worry, Mississippi. I have seen the 3rd madam and told her what you said before. The 3rd madam is seriously injured, not only because of the collision, but also because one of her arms is broken. She needs to have a good rest for a period of time. 3rd Miss Xiao and 4th Miss Xiao are both there, and they are very angry to see me." In fact, they were not just angry. If it were not for the 3rd Madam of Xiao's permission, the 3rd Miss Xiao, who seemed to have a bad temper, would have hit her. The 3rd branch of Xiao's mansion also had 2 daughters, both of whom were the biological daughters of the 3rd Madam. "What did the 3rd Madam say about you wanting the carriage?" Qin Wanru smiled slightly. The reaction of the 3rd branch was very normal. Although it was said that Qin Yuru's carriage collided with the 3rd Madam's carriage and Qin Yuru went to save the 3rd Madam, how could the 3rd Madam not know the real situation? With Qin Yuru's temperament, it was enough for her to be safe and sound. How could she really save the 3rd Madam? Even if she went through the formalities at that time, it was just for show. There were many servant girls and old maids around the 3rd Madam, so how could she help her? Moreover, judging from Qin Yuru's neck, it should be inconvenient for her to see others at that time. Her neck was crooked. Even if Qin Yuru had planned to save the 3rd Madam, it was impossible for her to do it later. It was true that she hid in the side and did not come out. What happened yesterday was definitely not an accident. Qin Yuru was forced to think of a way to remedy the situation because of the matter in Prince Cheng's mansion. How could there be a way so coincidentally sent to her immediately? She must have sent the way to Duke Xing's mansion, and the 3rd Madam was coincidentally schemed by Madam of Duke Xing. It should be that the 3rd Madam was about to go out and Madam of Duke Xing played some tricks appropriately. Therefore, when the 3rd Madam met Qin Yuru, the 2 carriages directly collided, and then something happened. Qin Yuru knew it early. She could find it from the carriage left by Qin Yuru. And this clue was sent by Qin Wanru to the 3rd branch of Duke Xing's mansion. "I said that the 1st Miss left in a hurry today and left in Madame Dowager's carriage. The carriage she brought before is also going back now. 3rd Madam, please make an exception and return the carriage of our mansion to me, so that I can ask the coachman to drive the empty carriage back." The 3rd Madam didn't say anything, but the 3rd Miss asked me to leave the carriage here. She said that the matter of the collision had not been solved and needed to be investigated again. After that, I begged the 3rd Miss several times, but the 3rd Miss refused to let me take the carriage away. Chu Lu was more and more convinced of her Mississippi previously. The 3rd Miss deliberately stopped her from letting the 1st Miss's carriage go back just because she was a servant of Qin's mansion and did not apologize to the 3rd Madam immediately after bumping into the 3rd Madam. But later, her repeated pleas aroused the 3rd Miss's suspicion. After that, even the 3rd Madam, who was lying in bed, observed her behavior suspiciously. Now that she had successfully attracted the 3rd Madam's attention, no matter who came to ask for the carriage, it would be impossible. The Miss was really scheming. In this way, she sent the 1st Miss's carriage to the 3rd Madam of Xiao. The things in the carriage were enough to prove that the 1st Miss and 3rd Madam of Xiao's carriage had a conspiracy. And the fact that the 1st Miss pretended to be the Miss today also showed that someone deliberately sent the 1st Miss to Duke Xing's mansion. The rumor that the first miss had saved the third Madam of Shao also proved this. It was all interconnected. Before, it was to prove that the first miss was the miss of Duke Xing's mansion. Now the facts were here, and these original positive proofs became negative proofs. Chapter 439. Qin Yuru's carriage was left in Duke Xing's mansion, leaving a loophole. At that time, Qin Yuru's true identity was exposed. When the people of Qin's mansion went back, Madame Dowager came with a carriage. In that case, she naturally had no face to stay in Duke Xing's mansion and would definitely take Qin Yuru back in Madame Dowager's carriage. At that time, no one would care about the carriage that Qin Yuru had taken before. Of course, even if they thought of it, they would be too ashamed to mention the previous carriage. The carriage was bound to fall in Duke Xing's mansion, which was another reason why Qin Wanru invited old Madame Qin. She could take Qin Yuru, whose true identity had been exposed, away. Everything was interlinked, and everyone's reaction was almost calculated. Then the next step was to send the carriage to the third branch of Duke Xing's mansion. Third Madame Shao was seriously injured and couldn't get up until now, which meant that third Madame Shao didn't conspire with Qin Yuru and Madame of Duke Xing. On the other hand, she was injured under the conspiracy of Qin Yuru and Madame of Duke Xing. In addition, there were rumors that Qin Yuru had saved third Madame Shao. Even if this was really an accident, the third branch of Shao's mansion couldn't be peaceful, not to mention that there was another conspiracy. Qin Wanru was seizing the opportunity now. She wanted Madame of Duke Xing to be too busy to plot against her or to plot against her in a hurry. She knew that Madame of Duke Xing would definitely plot against her before she got a firm foothold in Duke Xing's mansion. "Who is it?" Suddenly an old maid's scolding voice came from outside. "I'm here to send something to second miss to change," a servant girl said timidly. The old maid looked up and down at the two servant girls and the clothes in the tray in their hands. She didn't find anything strange, so she let them out. The two servant girls came in one after the other. When they entered the room and saw Qin Wanru leaning against the bed, they hurriedly stepped forward and saluted. "Fifth Mississippi." There were 4 misses in Duke Xing's mansion, and these 4 misses were all older than Qin Wanru. In this way, Qin Wanru's ranking in Shao's mansion was 5th Miss Shao. Qin Wanru hadn't been officially recorded in the Shao family tree, but everyone knew that it was only a matter of time. Everyone in the mansion greeted her first, which also showed their affection for her. "What's the matter?" Qin Wanru asked calmly. Hearing that young miss has woken up, Madam asked this servant to send some clean clothes to 5th Mississippi, the leading maid replied respectfully. There were several pieces of clothing on the tray in her hand, and it was obvious that they were all new. The tray in the hands of the maid at the back was smaller. There were 3 beautiful ornamental boxes, which were obviously ornaments. "Our young mistress brought her own clothes." Yujia answered the question. "Our madam said that 5th Miss is the legitimate daughter of our family and has a different status. Naturally, she needs to wear some new clothes. Our madam bought these clothes directly from a clothing store according to Mrs. Figure. That clothing store is the best in the capital." The maid answered. How could there be ready-made clothes so soon? Qin Wanru was secretly shocked. It could almost be said that after she exposed Qin Yuru and ruined Madame of Duke Xing's plan, Qin Wanru immediately changed her mind and prepared ready-made clothes and other necessities for her. It was so fast. "Thank your madam for me," Qin Wanru said softly. Although people of Duke Xing's mansion would call her 5th Miss out of politeness, she didn't need to call Madame of Duke Xing, second aunt, first. "Yes, I'm leaving." The 2 servant girls handed the trays in their hands to Yujia and Chu Lu respectively and left. Seeing the 2 servant girls disappear at the door, Qin Wanru frowned slightly and turned her eyes to the 2 trays of clothes and ornaments. Yujia put the tray in her hand on the table, reached out to take a piece of clothing from it, shook it and unfolded it. Although she was prepared in her heart, she couldn't help but admire the embroidery on it. It was a very beautiful set of clothes. The light lotus color was also in line with Qin Wanru's habit of dressing in the past. The yellow flowers dotted the hem of the skirt formed an uneven lace, which looked more and more lovely. It was indeed the style that young girls in the boudoir liked at this time. The next few sets were like this. There were a total of 4 sets of clothes, each of which was extremely beautiful, and the size was also suitable. For some women who were good at making clothes, they could sew 80 or 90% of the clothes with just a few glances. There should be a woman who was good at making clothes around Madame of Duke Xing. She had seen Qin Wanru, so she could immediately choose such suitable finished products. Where are my previous sets of clothes? Qin Wanru frowned and asked. These should still be in the previous yard. Yujie hesitated for a moment and said. When they came here, they lived with Qin Yuru in the yard near the Chuehua gate. Now they were still in the wing room near the flower hall outside. But this was just a temporary place to rest. After all, they couldn't really live here. Let's go back first. Qin Wanru lifted the quilt and got out of bed. Chu Lu came over and squatted down to help her put on her shoes. Qin Wanru helped Yujie to stand up straight. She calmed down and felt that she was in good condition, so she nodded to the 2 servant girls. There was nothing else to pack in the room. They just took the 2 trays of things sent here and walked out. Seeing Qin Wanru coming out, the 4 old maids hurriedly bowed to Qin Wanru, and then followed her to the inner courtyard. Now all the people in Duke Xing's mansion knew that the second Miss Qin was the daughter of their late heir of Duke Xing's mansion, so those who saw them on the way should avoid them and bow to them. Qin Wanru led a group of people into the Chuehua gate and came to the yard where she lived before. When she pushed the courtyard door open, she was immediately stunned when she saw several old maids and servant girls who were packing in the yard. When she left before, there were no servants in the yard. "Fifth Miss, why are you back?" An old maid in charge hurried over and said with a surprised look. "Shouldn't I come back?" Qin Wanru asked softly. "This is just the guest yard. How can Fifth Miss live here? Madam has arranged another residence for Fifth Miss to move there. I will take you there now." The old maid in charge eagerly flattered her. "Madam of Duke Xing has already prepared a yard for me." Qin Wanru's expression became strange. "Yes, it has already been prepared. This guest yard is too shabby. Fifth Miss can't live here. Fifth Miss, please come with me. Yujie, take the clothes we brought before." Since there had been arrangements and it was reasonable, Qin Wanru naturally couldn't refuse, so she immediately ordered Yujie. The 2 old maids of great elder princess's mansion took the trays in the hands of Yujie and Chu Lu, and then retreated behind them politely. "Fifth Miss still has clothes here." The old maid in charge was so shocked that her face turned slightly pale. At first glance, she knew that it was not good. "Our miss came here to accompany First Miss, so she naturally brought clothes here," Chu Lu said unhappily. The old maid in charge panicked, pointed to one side and said anxiously, "We came to clean the yard and found some clothes. We thought they belonged to First Miss of Qin's mansion, so we threw them out. We didn't know Fifth Miss's clothes were among them. Please forgive us, Fifth Miss." Following her finger, everyone looked in that direction. When they saw clearly the pile of clothes, Yujie was so angry that her face turned pale. It was indeed the clothes that Qin Wanru had brought to Duke Xing's mansion before. They had been wrapped in a parcel, but at this time, a few corners of the parcel were torn and thrown in a mess. The clothes and other things inside were also pulled out. Everyone in the yard was cleaning. It was unknown whether it was because they thought these were Qin Yuru's clothes, so no one cared about them. Even the water from cleaning was wet on them, which looked like a pile of garbage. Seeing that the situation was not good, the old maid in charge hurriedly ran over. She did not dare to open the parcel directly, but just stuffed the clothes that had fallen outside into the parcel, while saying anxiously, "Fifth Miss, I didn't know that these are your things. Fortunately, they are only a little wet now. The things inside should be fine and can still be used." After stuffing all the clothes into the parcel, the old maid in charge came over with a few parcels with a sad face. Looking at her hands, which seemed to be stained with some dirty water during cleaning, Yujie's face darkened. She reached out to pull the parcel from the old maid in charge's hand and looked at the several big black handprints on it. She was so angry that she could not even speak. Needless to say, the clothes and other things inside had been stained. Are you stupid? When our miss came here yesterday, she said that she would live in here. Yujie was so angry that her face changed. Qin Wanru's eyes fell on the face of the old maid in charge. She saw that although her face was respectful with a little panic, her eyes were very flexible. At first glance, she knew that she was a clever old maid. Then she looked at the courtyard full of servants who were at a loss, and silently raised the corner of her mouth. Sure enough, they were waiting for her here. Where is the new courtyard? Qin Wanru narrowed her eyes, and a trace of coldness flashed through her watery eyes. Yes, I will take you there now. Seeing that Qin Wanru did not pursue it, the old maid in charge excitedly flattered her, and then led the way in front. Qin Wanru turned to follow her calmly. Miss. Yujie stamped her feet angrily. She thought that Qin Wanru should not be so generous to let the old maid in charge live here. Go to have a rest first. I am tired. Qin Wanru reached out to touch her head, closed her eyes and said. Seeing her weak look, Yujie did not dare to make any more trouble. She hurriedly reached out to help her, and hurriedly followed the old maid in charge to the inner courtyard. It seemed that this courtyard should not be the kind that leaned against the door of Chuehua. She was also very curious about the other courtyard that Madame of Duke Xing prepared for her. It seemed that it was not a guest courtyard. She was also very curious about the other courtyard that Madame of Duke Xing prepared for her. Chapter 440. Chu Huan Courtyard. There were 3 big bright characters at the gate of the courtyard, which were very simple and natural. At first glance, one could know that the strokes were vigorous. Standing at the gate, Qin Wanru looked at the size of the courtyard, which was about half the size of old Madame Qin's courtyard in Qin's mansion. At first glance, one could know that it was one of the main courtyards. Who lived here before? Qin Wanru stood still and asked. No one lives here. I originally wanted to arrange the first miss to live here, but the first miss doesn't like to be too far away from Madame, so she vacated this yard. The old maid in charge explained cleverly. Qin Wanru walked into the courtyard. There were 2 servant girls in the courtyard. Seeing Qin Wanru coming in, they hurriedly bowed respectfully. A group of people walked to the wide-open main room. Entering the room, they saw exquisite and grand mahogany furniture and carved tables. Qin Wanru had been to Duke Yang's mansion before, and felt that the decoration in front of her was almost similar to the decoration in old Madame's room of Duke Yang's mansion at that time. Although Duke Yang's mansion had declined, the decoration of old Madame of Duke Yang's room was very profound, which couldn't be decorated by ordinary people. Old Madame Qin's room was also the best in the whole Qin's mansion, but many things were newly bought. For such an aristocratic family with hundreds of years of history, there were few things that could be taken out. But the set of mahogany furniture in front of her and other decorations in the room were all exquisite and ancient. This was not an ordinary courtyard. It was not the courtyard where Qin Yuru lived in the last life either. It was so gorgeous and grand, and the decoration was all exquisite. Only the real master of Duke Xing's mansion could live in it. Looking at the curtains hanging on both sides and the round pearl curtain at the door, Qin Wanru raised her eyebrows. She actually knew there was such a courtyard. It was not Qin Yuru who lived in this courtyard in the last life, but the first young master of Duke Xing's mansion, who was later the heir. The reason why she remembered it so clearly was that Qin Yuru came back in anger and was slapped in the face. At that time, Qin Yuru scolded people while saying the name of Chu Huan Courtyard. At that time, Qin Wanru happened to meet her at the intersection and was pushed to the ground by Qin Yuru. She was also severely reprimanded by Qin Yuru, who mentioned the name of Chu Huan Courtyard from time to time. It was Xiao Hua En's yard, but not yet. This should be the wedding room prepared for Xiao Hua then. In his previous life, the one who hit Qin Yuru was the wife of the first young master Xiao. He didn't know why she had a conflict with Qin Yuru and even hit her. Madame of Duke Xing was really generous to let Xiao Hua and's courtyard, which was decorated for his wedding, live in. Even her maternal grandmother would have nothing to say about her behavior. She walked into the room and sat down on the chair in the middle. Several old maids of the princess's mansion put the trays in their hands on the table at the door and left politely. The supervisor of Duke Xing's mansion pointed at the decorations in the room with a smile and said, "Fifth miss, these are all arranged by our madam. Many of them are taken from our madam's dowry. I hope you like them." "This is good, I like it very much." Qin Wanru nodded and said softly. Yu Jia and Chu Li's complexion became better. They were no longer angry about the clothes. No matter how they looked at it, this courtyard was not at the same level as the previous temporary courtyard, which showed Madame of Duke Xing's sincerity. "You can go back now." Qin Wanru waved her hand and said. "Yes, I will leave now. The supervisor of this courtyard will come to report to you later." The supervisor of old maids said with a smile and then bowed to Qin Wanru and left. Seeing the supervisor of old maids leave, Qin Wanru frowned deeply. Would Madame of Duke Xing be so kind to give her the courtyard that she had carefully prepared for her son? Even if it was for showing it to her maternal grandmother, it was impossible. Madame of Duke Xing didn't seem to be a person who would do such a thing. But if not, why did she give her such a courtyard? Since she gave it to her, she naturally lived in it. In the future, Madame of Duke Xing couldn't snatch it from her blatantly. There was a contradiction that made her very uneasy. In the last life, although Qin Yuru lived well, it was not here. In this life, things had changed. She became the miss of Duke Xing's mansion, but she lived better. This was not compensation. Qin Wanru could be sure of this. In the last life, Qin Yuru lived in a courtyard that could last forever. Although it was good for outsiders, it was ordinary for people of Duke Xing's mansion. With Qin Yuru's identity at that time, it was the best to live like this. But now she lived here, which was almost to rob the residence of Madame of Duke Xing's son. Such a residence was usually chosen for a long time and was arranged early. Without a few years of effort, it would be impossible for it to be laid out to this extent. Madame of Duke Xing had spent so much effort, so how could she let her live in it? Another thing that Qin Wanru couldn't understand was that the first young master of Duke Xing's mansion seemed to inherit the position of heir of Duke Xing's mansion. Living in such a courtyard was equivalent to his identity. What did it mean that she lived in it now? Did it make people doubt Xiao Hua and's position of heir of Duke Xing? If this courtyard was only gorgeous and outstanding, Madame of Duke Xing might tolerate it. But if people doubted the position of heir of Duke Xing, Madame of Duke Xing would never tolerate it. There must be other reasons. "Miss, these clothes can't be worn anymore." Chu Li's voice came, sounding very angry. Qin Wanru collected her thoughts and looked at Chu Lu. Seeing the clothes that were shaken out on the table, she stood up and walked over. "Miss, the clothes bag is not opened, but the clothes are almost unwearable. There are stains on them, big or small." Yu Jia also helped to tidy up. After shaking out a piece of clothes, she said angrily, "How could such clothes be worn?" Qin Wanru didn't bring many clothes, only 3. Originally, she didn't intend to live here for a long time. She picked up the clothes in Yu Jia's hands and looked at them. As expected, there were stains of various sizes. Thinking of the courtyard being clean just now, she knew they were not clean water stains. Fortunately, a few sets of clothes were sent here before, otherwise Miss would have no clothes to wear now. Chu Lu muttered unwillingly. Qin Wanru was surprised. The clothes that had been prepared? The clothes that couldn't be worn in front of her? What was so special about it? "Tomorrow, I will recognize the ancestors and return to the clan. It's too urgent." Old Madam sat in the room and frowned, looking unhappy. She didn't sit in the first seat, but on the left side of the room. Rui and Great Elder Princess sat on the right side impolitely. There were tea and snacks on the tea table between them. It should be very harmonious, but the atmosphere in the room was not very good. Rui and Great Elder Princess looked at old madam with a cold face and sharp eyes. Maybe because the son-in-law died early. Rui and Great Elder Princess was much sharper than ordinary women because she was gone. At this time, Rui and Great Elder Princess kept a straight face and felt the coldness in her eyes. All the servants in the room of old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion held their breath and did not dare to breathe. In terms of momentum, old Madam was far inferior to Rui and Great Elder Princess. If you don't recognize the ancestors tomorrow, I will take Zhuozhuo away, so that you can find all kinds of reasons to doubt Zhuozhuo's identity. Rui and Great Elder Princess looked at old Madam and said impolitely. She meant that if there was a disagreement, she would take Zhuozhuo away and put the blame on Duke Xing's mansion. Old Madam was very unhappy, and her face had been gloomy since Rui and Great Elder Princess entered the room. Great Elder Princess, Wanru is the granddaughter of our mansion. How can we let her go with you? If you really want her, let Hao-er come back. Hao-er doesn't want to come back and still wants to live in my place. Rui and Great Elder Princess refused directly. She said that she would take Hao-er to live in her place, but she didn't want to let Hao-er come back in a few years. Duke Xing's mansion didn't have good intentions to Hao-er, so they didn't send anyone to teach him carefully. In this case, she would find someone to teach him herself. Great Elder Princess, this is unreasonable. Old Madam's face became more and more gloomy. There are many unreasonable things in your mansion. Take Madam of Duke Xing as an example. She has parents, but she has been raised in your mansion. Are you planning to marry her to my son-in-law? Later, she didn't get married, but married the current Duke Xing. I don't know if it is an elegant thing or an unreasonable thing. Rui and Great Elder Princess sneered. She was noble and had nothing to worry about now, so she naturally said what she thought. Her words made old Madam's face turn red, green, and pale. Of course, the whole Duke Xing's mansion would lose face if she said this kind of thing. At that time, she did mean to let the current Madam of Duke Xing marry her eldest son. She didn't expect that her eldest son proposed to marry her eldest son and had no choice but to let her marry her second son. This matter was also a secret in Duke Xing's mansion. Duke Xing's mansion's reputation would be ruined if she colluded with the two brothers. But at that time, old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion was really angry. She asked Madam of Duke Xing to marry her second son in order to anger Infanta Qinghua. In fact, this thing was extremely disgraceful and against the rules. If it was exposed, the whole Duke Xing's mansion would also lose face. Especially at this critical time, Duke Xing's mansion couldn't have a bad reputation. Okay, as you say, Great Elder Princess. But in a hurry, the etiquette may not be enough, and the number of people invited may not be enough. Old Madam gritted her teeth and had to give in. It was a big deal to be recorded in the genealogy, especially when Qin Wanru's biological father was the former heir of Duke Xing's mansion, Xiao Jiang. Qin Wanru's return meant that Xiao Jiang's bloodline not only had a disobedient youngest son, but also had an elder sister. For so many years, Duke Xing's mansion had been obscuring the existence of Xiao Yuanhao. Now the appearance of Qin Wanru made it impossible for them to obscure the existence of the former heir of Duke Xing's bloodline. Thank you, old madam. Since she had answered, Rui and Great Elder Princess's face became gentle. Chapter 441. While old Madam and Rui and Great Elder Princess were arguing, Madam of Duke Xing was waiting in the wing room on one side. After Rui and Great Elder Princess entered the door, she was sent out. She was originally discussing something with old Madam. At this time, she had to interrupt and could only retreat to one side. Sitting in the wing room and waiting, Madam of Duke Xing's face showed a bit of ferocity and unwillingness from time to time. She almost succeeded in her plan. If Qin Yuru came in impersonating, she could do whatever she wanted in the future, and Xiao Yuanhao would also be in her hands. Even if Xiao Yuanhao died, Rui, and Great Elder Princess would not put all her eggs in one basket and fight with Duke Xing's mansion to the death. After all, there was a daughter who was suspected to be the former heir of Duke Xing's mansion, right? But now, this plan was ruined by Qin Wanru. Madame of Duke Xing was sure that this matter had something to do with Qin Wanru. The two middle-aged couples arranged by Madame of Duke Xing wanted others to doubt Qin Wanru's identity. As soon as Qin Yuru's identity was doubted, Madame of Duke Xing released the couple. The purpose was to say that Qin Wanru was their daughter, so it was impossible for her to have anything to do with the former heir of Duke Xing. Qin Yuru could not be the daughter of the former heir of Duke Xing, but Qin Wanru could not be. But it happened suddenly, and the preparation was not allowed. The middle-aged couple originally did not come out to testify against Qin Wanru at this time, so they failed on the verge of success. Madame of Duke Xing was not worried that these two people would betray her. Originally, she had sent someone to contact them secretly and let the couple pretend to be her. Moreover, that person was sent away by her recently, so she was not worried that the couple would testify against anyone. Nanny Xing pushed the door open and walked in quietly. "How is it?" Madame of Duke Xing clenched her fists and whispered. "Madam, don't worry. The clothes have been sent out, and the original ones can't be worn anymore. The first Miss Qin used to live there, but no one knew that those clothes belonged to her. It's reasonable that they were thrown out to be washed," Nanny Xing said. "Not suspicious?" Madame of Duke Xing hesitated for a moment and asked. That girl was cunning, so she had to ask more. "No doubt. The first miss of Qin's mansion pretended to be the first miss of our mansion. The people in our mansion have a problem with her. It's reasonable for us to throw her parcel out at will. The old maid in charge has replied that she just asked a few questions casually and didn't say anything else. Madam has also sent clothes before. She can't really argue with us for a few clothes." Nanny Xing comforted Madame of Duke Xing. Since Madame of Duke Xing entered Duke Xing's mansion, Nanny Xing had been serving her. Naturally, she could see that Madame of Duke Xing was very uneasy and was not as steady and decent as before. "I'm not afraid that she will argue with me, but I'm afraid that she will go to that person again. At that time, that person will go to old Madame to make trouble." Madame of Duke Xing sighed and glanced in the direction of the main room. Nanny Xing knew that she was talking about Rui and Great Elder Princess. No one in this mansion dared to provoke Rui and Great Elder Princess. In the past, although they didn't get along well with each other, at least they maintained a superficial peace, or they simply didn't see each other. But now it seemed that this Great Elder Princess would not let go of Duke Xing's mansion. If something went wrong, there would be an accident. Madame of Duke Xing couldn't win in a fight, and she couldn't win in a quarrel. She was really helpless. Seeing that Madame of Duke Xing was still frowning, Nanny Xing was silent for a moment and showed a smile on her face. "Madam, it's not too late now. If something really happens, so many people will see it, and it has nothing to do with you. No matter how Rui and Great Elder Princess makes trouble, she is only one person. Even if she is Great Elder Princess, she can't resist the gossip. That's the only way. How is the preparation over there?" Madame of Duke Xing's eyes flickered and her voice became lower and lower. There was no one else in the room, only her and Nanny Xing. Her voice sounded low and weird. "Madam, rest assured. It has been arranged. After this matter, Cousin Miss will be married to Jiangnan. Jiangnan is temporarily far away from here. No one will remember what happened to Cousin Mississippi. Even if they know something, so what? Cousin Miss has you to support her." Nanny Xing comforted her with a smile. "Will there be any accident again?" Madame of Duke Xing always felt uneasy. "Madam, it's okay. No matter how smart she is this time, she can't think of it." Nanny Xing pointed in the direction of Chu Huan Courtyard and said. "I hope so. This girl can't be kept alive. She will become a scourge if she stays alive." Madame of Duke Xing said with a gloomy face. A part of the sunlight from the window shone on her face, making her face look like yin and yang. Her beautiful face looked a little weird and extremely ugly. "Madam, rest assured. It's absolutely safe this time. She has just arrived in the mansion. Even if there are only 2 servant girls who can testify for her, no one will believe what she says. Under the watchful eyes of the public, Rue and great elder princess can't say anything. Even if your aristocratic family can spare her life, she has to live in the imperial court for the rest of her life." Nanny Sheng gritted her teeth and said, "Okay, make more detailed arrangements. There must be no more accidents." Although Madame of Duke Xing was satisfied, she still told her. She had set up a lot of things and rarely made mistakes in the past. But now she made mistakes one after another, so she had no confidence in herself now. She always felt that there would be another mistake at the last moment. "Madam, rest assured." Nanny Sheng nodded and left. She walked to the door, asked 2 little servant girls to pay attention to Madame of Duke Xing's movement inside, turned around and hurried to a place in the inner courtyard. It was the most remote corner of the mansion, where cousin Miss Wang Yishu lived. The courtyard was not big and there were not many servants, so this corner seemed a little remote. After entering the main room, a servant girl came over and lifted the curtain to invite Nanny Sheng in. After entering the room, Nanny Sheng saw Wang Yishu lying on the bed with an extremely poor complexion. Nanny Sheng hurriedly smiled and said, "Cousin Miss, are you feeling better?" Wang Yishu coughed in a low voice and covered her mouth with a handkerchief. Her face was as pale as snow. At first glance, one could tell that she was in a bad condition. "Thank you for your concern, Nanny. I'm fine now. The doctor said that I just need to take a good rest." That's good, that's good. Madam's kindness is not in vain." Nanny Sheng said as she looked around. "Nanny, are you looking for my brother?" Wang Yishu said in a hoarse voice. If someone was here, he would definitely find that this young Miss Wang was almost different from the one she had seen before. Not only was her face pale, but her skin was also dark. She seemed to have aged a few years all of a sudden. "Yes, has cousin young master come?" Nanny Sheng nodded and said with a smile. She reached out to pull a chair, sat down in front of the bed, and waved her hand. Wang Yishu's servant girl looked at Wang Yishu timidly. "All of you can leave. I have a few words with your miss," Nanny Sheng said impatiently with a straight face. The servant girl did not dare to hesitate any longer and hurriedly left. In the past few days in Duke Xing's mansion, they had also been treated coldly. Even Wang Yishu did not dare to offend the personal old maid of Madame of Duke Xing, let alone a servant girl. "How is cousin young master's preparation?" As soon as the servant girl left, Nanny Sheng directly asked. "It's all ready. Will second aunt really let me go?" Wang Yishu raised her pale and haggard face and asked uncertainly. "Cousin Miss, what are you talking about? How can Madam not let you go? In the past, Madam always thought of you in everything, didn't she? It's because what you did in the Imperial Palace was so wrong that Madam can't let others see you. That's why the current situation is like this. As long as this matter is settled, Madam will definitely act as a matchmaker for cousin Miss, so that you can marry a good family and leave the capital city far away." Nanny Sheng smiled like a big chrysanthemum in full bloom. "Then, what about eldest brother?" Wang Yishu didn't have much smile on her face. "Cousin young master can do whatever he wants. If cousin young master is willing to follow cousin Miss, Madam will make the decision about going to the south of the Yangtze River. If cousin young master is unwilling to go to the south of the Yangtze River, Madam will take care of him in the capital city. Although cousin young master can't take the imperial examination now, he can still be recommended to be an official. After this matter is settled for a few years, when everyone calms down, Duke Xing can recommend him." Nanny Sheng comforted Wang Yishu with a smile. "Then, it's up to Nanny and second aunt." Wang Yishu gritted her teeth with a bit of viciousness in her eyes. It was all because of Qin Wanru that she fell into such a situation. As long as she thought of this, she couldn't wait to tear Qin Wanru apart. Now that Qin Wanru was going to fall into her hands, how could she let go of her? Qin Wanru ruined herself like this, so she would ruin her whole life. The high and mighty lineal daughter of Duke Xing's mansion. She was dreaming. While Nanny Sheng and Wang Yishu were discussing things, they were waiting for Wang Xingxue, Wang Yishu's brother, to come over. Meanwhile, the third branch of Duke Xing's mansion was also secretly taking action. Xiao Caihuan and Xiao Keiling, the third miss and the fourth miss of the third branch of Duke Xing's mansion, came with a few servant girls and old maids. They just came out of the room of the third madam. They didn't think much about it before. They just thought that their mother was hit by the first miss of Ningyuan Army General's mansion and they must find a chance to discuss Taoism with Qin Yuru. But now they thought it was a bit unexpected. After a little discussion with the third madam, the two sisters went to the open space where the carriage was parked with a few trusted subordinates. Both Qin Wanru's carriage and Qin Yuru's carriage were parked in this open space. Third miss, fourth miss, are you going out? An old maid came up to them with a smile and asked. Xiao Caihuan looked the old maid up and down but didn't recognize her. She raised her head slightly and said with a bit of arrogance, "Is Qin Yuru's carriage still here? I want to have a look." Third miss, I'm afraid we can't do that. The carriage of Qin's mansion is indeed here, but now the matter between our mansion and the two misses of Qin's mansion has not been clarified. We'd better not make any accident at this time. Old madam is upset at this time. The old maid replied with a smile. Old madam had a good impression of the first miss of Qin's mansion before, but she didn't like the second miss of Qin's mansion. But the fact surprised everyone. Qin Yuru wanted to pretend to be the second miss, but Qin Wanru was the real one. This news had just been spread to the third branch. Chapter 442. The old maid used old madam to frighten Xiao Caihuan and Xiao Keiling. If it were in the past, they would definitely get out of the way after hearing the old maid's words. But now, they were even more suspicious. Their mother was injured and could not get up from the bed. The doctor said that she had to rest for at least half a year or so. She might even suffer from more illnesses and disasters in the future, which would damage her body. Seeing their mother suffering, the two sisters had long been burning with anger. In their hearts, they guessed that Qin Yuru had plotted against their mother. The evidence was in front of them, so how could they stop? What if we have to see it? Xiao Keiling said domineeringly. This is not good. Madam will not like it, nor will old madam. The old maid's smile was a little stiff. Pull her away. Xiao Keiling's eyes fell on a carriage behind the old maid. It was not the carriage of Duke Xing's mansion. It should be the carriage of Qin's mansion. The old maid happened to stand in front of the carriage. Two servant girls behind her came over and pulled the old maid away from the carriage. Xiao Keiling took a step forward and reached out to lift the curtain. When she saw what was inside, she was so angry that her face was as white as snow. What is it? Xiao Caihuan also hurried forward and stretched out her head to have a look. She almost fainted on the spot. Go, let's go to see Grandma. Xiao Caihuan said angrily, turned around and strode away. Xiao Keiling glared at the old maid and said sternly, take her with us. Since she repeatedly stopped us from seeing it, she must have colluded with us. Whether it was true or not, Xiao Keiling felt that it had something to do with this old maid since she dared to stop them just now. Third miss, fourth miss, I've just been assigned to manage this parking lot. I don't know anything. It's just that Madam said to manage this parking lot well and that there can't be any accidents. That's why I came to stop you. I don't know anything else. Seeing that the situation was not good, the old maid cried loudly and struggled from side to side. It seemed that she was about to break free. Xiao Caihuan was furious. Two more servants, hold her down and take her away. Since this old maid was suspicious, of course, they would not let her go. Two more maids came over. They not only gagged the old maid, but also put her hands behind her back, twisted her body to fix her, and dragged her forward. Along the way, the old maid was still struggling, but she was helplessly pulled and couldn't make any sound. A group of people came to old Madame's courtyard noisily. As soon as they entered the door, Xiao Caihuan and Xiao Keiling took out she covered her face with a handkerchief and went crying into the main room. When Madame of Duke Xing came out of the room and saw the scene in front of her, her face darkened. Caihuan, Keiling, what are you doing? Great Elder Princess is still in old Madame's room. Seeing a large group of servant girls and old maids standing at the door, Xiao Caihuan and Xiao Keiling did not dare to cry anymore. They immediately held their handkerchiefs and sobbed in a low voice, but did not answer Madame of Duke Xing's words. Leave now. Let's talk about it later. At this time, your grandma has no time to play with you. Seeing that her two nieces ignored her, Madame of Duke Xing's face became increasingly ugly and she scolded them. She had a noble status in Duke Xing's mansion. She was in charge of the inner court. Even old Madame had been behind the scenes. In the past, in the inner court of Duke Xing's mansion, she had the final say. She did not expect that her two nieces should be angry with her. In addition, she was in a bad mood at this time, so she had already shown an impatient look on her face. The curtain of the main room was lifted, and Rui, a great elder princess, walked out with her head held high, followed by old Madame. Seeing Xiao Caihuan and Xiao Keiling wiping their tears in the courtyard, they were both stunned. Grandma, please help my mother. My mother was framed. Seeing old Madame come out, Xiao Keiling, who was quick-witted, immediately rushed to her. In the past, she was the youngest in the mansion. Although she was not as favored as her eldest sister, compared with other sisters, she was favored by old Madame. She dared to do some things that others did not dare to do. At this time, she rushed to old Madame and cried loudly. Old Madame's face was as gloomy as water. When discussing with Rui and great elder princess just now, she suffered a little loss again. At this time, she was also full of anger. Looking at her little granddaughter who had been kind to her in the past, she was not kind to her. She felt that she had lost face in front of Rui and great elder princess again. What's going on? Isn't your mother lying on the bed? The so-called lying well seemed to be nothing and just lying down to rest. Well, Caihuan, Keiling, your grandma is also tired and not energetic at this time. Go back first. Madame of Duke Xing's face softened. She came over, sighed, and reached out to pull Xiao Keiling. Second aunt, did you frame my mother? Xiao Keiling stepped back, widened her eyes, and said while crying. Rui and great elder princess was about to leave, but at this time, she stopped and stood aside to watch. What nonsense are you talking about? Did I treat you so well in the past that you don't know the difference between seniority and seniority? Old Madame was furious and shouted. Grandma, Grandma, someone wants to frame my mother. Yesterday, the first Miss of Qin's mansion crashed into my mother's carriage. It was premeditated. She deliberately hit my mother and deliberately said that she saved my mother. But in fact, she deliberately crashed into my carriage and deliberately wanted Grandma to recognize her. Seeing that her sister was scolded, Xiao Caihuan hurriedly came over and cried. Grandma, someone wants to frame my mother. Save my mother. Xiao Keiling was young. Hearing her sister crying, she immediately cried out with grievance. Grandma, someone wants to frame my mother. Xiao Caihuan also cried. They cried together, and old Madame's head hurt. Madame of Duke Xing's face became very ugly in a place where no one noticed, and her hands hidden in her sleeves trembled slightly. The carriage, Qin Yuru's carriage. In fact, she had long thought that there might be something wrong with the carriage. But at this time, things happened one after another, and she had no energy to check it. Even Nanny Sheng had no time to check it. She had mentioned it before, and Nanny Sheng said that she would send someone to check it. Now it seemed that Qin Yuru's carriage was not only improper, but also discovered by the third branch. This matter was a little tricky. Second aunt, when my mother wanted to go to the street before, she didn't take that carriage. You said that the carriage was good and that the shaft of my mother's original carriage was not very good, so my mother got on your carriage. Unexpectedly, after going to the street, the carriage deliberately made a circle. It said that it was a shortcut, but in fact, it was not close to the place where my mother wanted to go. It was obvious that the coachman did it on purpose. Xiao Kailing said angrily. Before the third madam went out, she had told her two daughters clearly. At that time, she didn't think much of it. Later, when she thought about it, she felt that there were many doubts. Especially when Qin Yuru was prepared for it. How could there be something wrong with the coachman? Maybe he is not very familiar with the road. I haven't used this coachman for a long time. Madame of Duke Xing was anxious, but she didn't dare to show it on her face. She smiled and pulled Xiao Kailing. Child, if you have something to say, let's talk about it. Great Elder Princess is still watching here. Great Elder Princess, please laugh at me. I won't laugh at you. But I really see that the first Miss of Qin's mansion and the third Madam of your mansion met at a very strange time. And it was rumored that the first Miss of Qin's mansion saved the third Madam of your mansion, didn't it? Rui and Great Elder Princess didn't intend to leave. At this time, she even showed a little surprise on her face, as if she was really curious. She didn't save our mother. It was obvious that after the carriage crashed, they just minded their own business. I don't know who spread the news that she saved our mother. She obviously wanted to crash into our mother, so that she could enter our Duke Xing's mansion and pretend to be our mother. There is evidence in the carriage. Xiao Caihuan wiped her tears and said angrily. As soon as Xiao Caihuan returned to the mansion, she heard that her mother had crashed into Qin Yuru's carriage and was saved by her. At that time, she had a good impression of her. Unexpectedly, she not only talked nonsense, but also did it deliberately. Qin Yuru was a member of Ningyuan Army General's mansion, so it was impossible for her to reach so far. If it was really intentional, someone in Duke Xing's mansion secretly conspired with her. This person had a great influence in Duke Xing's mansion. The first person that Xiao Caihuan and Xiao Kailing thought of was Madame of Duke Xing. After all, when they went out at that time, it was also Madame of Duke Xing's idea to change the carriage. Since the carriage was changed, the coachman was naturally changed. After that, the coachman took a detour, which had something to do with the change of carriage here. In this mansion, if there was anyone who dared to plot against their mother and had the ability to plot against their mother, they really didn't think of anyone except Madame of Duke Xing. But they didn't dare to say this directly, so they could only express their doubt about the coachman. Caihuan, Kailing, don't cry. When your grandmother is free, we can talk about this. This is not the time to be capricious. Madame of Duke Xing said gently, while asking a few servants to help Xiao Caihuan and Xiao Kailing up, as if she was comforting their elders. If it was in the past, this sentence would coax the two sisters, but it couldn't coax them now. Thinking of her mother lying in bed weakly, Xiao Kailing pushed away the servant girl who came to help her and cried, "Grandmother, just now when third sister and I went to check Qin Yuru's carriage, this old maid definitely wouldn't allow us to check it. At first glance, we can see that she is guilty. Grandmother, you have to do justice for my mother. My mother is so seriously injured, and her arm, I'm afraid. Grandmother, you have to do justice for our mother." Xiao Caihuan refused to stop and said while wiping her tears with a handkerchief. Hearing their testimonies, everyone's eyes fell on the old maid who was pushed over. The servant girl of the third branch pushed the old maid to the front of Old Madam. Old Madam felt a headache. Her head was full of buzzing sounds, and she could hardly hear their voices clearly. She pressed her head hard. Nanny Yu, who was beside her, hurriedly reached out to help her and whispered, "Old Madam. I'm fine. Let them in." Old Madam turned around with difficulty and walked inside. If she stood there, she was afraid that she would faint. Nanny Yu carefully helped her walk inside. When she sat down on the chair inside, she hurriedly asked the servant girl to serve tea again. After taking a sip, she calmed down and regained her consciousness. "Tell me, what's wrong?" Old Madam asked Xiao Caihuan and Xiao Kailing, who followed her in. "Grandmother, I have evidence." Seeing Old Madam's bad face, Xiao Caihuan was a little flustered. But when she thought of her mother's miserable situation, she became angry and suppressed her concern for old madam. Chapter 443. Old madam hesitated and asked. She glanced at Rui and great elder princess, who had returned to the room. She really wanted to drive her away. She was at a disadvantage just now when she argued with Rui and great elder princess. At this time, she didn't want Rui and great elder princess to listen to the affairs of their mansion. However, Rui and great elder princess was sitting still and didn't look like she would leave. Old madam just mentioned the matter of Qin Yuru pretending to be Qin Yuru. Even if she wanted to stay, she had a reason. Old madam knew that she had to listen to the matter today. She looked gloomy, but she had to ask. Grandma, there are several quilts in Qin Yuru's carriage. Xiao Caihuan gnashed her teeth and said. Everyone was stunned and didn't understand. What? Quilts? Old madam asked casually. She suddenly understood and sat up straight. Did you see it clearly? Grandma, if you don't believe it, you can send someone to check it. When fourth sister and I were about to see it, the old maid stopped us. After that, we saw more than one quilt in the carriage, Xiao Caihuan said with hatred. There were quilts in the carriage. This situation was almost impossible. No one would put several quilts in the carriage, whether to attend a banquet or go out. Qin Yuru was not a patient. She went to Prince Cheng's mansion and then to Duke Yang's mansion. Finally, when she went out to go back, she bumped into the carriage of third madam of Duke Xing's mansion. If there was a collision, quilts would be useful. If someone bumped into the wall of the carriage directly, it was very likely to be an accident. But what if there were several quilts? When there was a car accident, at most, she would hit the quilts, but it would not hurt anyone. Grandma, if Qin Yuru didn't plan to bump into people early, how could she prepare several quilts? Xiao Kailing cried. Grandma, Qin Yuru planned to bump into the carriage of our mansion, but who told her mother to go out? And the coachman happened to go that way. Grandma, please help mother. Xiao Kailing said. She knelt down with a plop, and Xiao Caihuan beside her also knelt down. Grandma, please find out the truth. Qin Yuru had already prepared quilts. But the two places she had been to before had nothing to do with Duke Xing's mansion. How could she coincidentally run into the carriage of Duke Xing's mansion? There was a fake bluegrass seal in Qin Yuru's hand. Qin Yuru showed it to old madam in order to gain old madam's favor. What happened in Prince Cheng's mansion had made her reputation worse, so she urgently needed this fake identity. Coincidentally, she bumped into the carriage of third madam, who occasionally went out. Later, she found out that third madam had known about it long ago. Old madam turned to look at madam of Duke Xing in shock. She was not really confused. Qin Yuru was just an unmarried miss, and it was impossible for her to reach into Duke Xing's mansion. If there was anyone else who could tip her off, the most suspicious person in this mansion was madam of Duke Xing. Mother, do you also find it suspicious? I also think so. Someone in this mansion colludes with the first Miss Qin. Madam of Duke Xing frowned and said. Since she said it so bluntly, old madam wondered if she had made a mistake. Was it someone else in the mansion? Go and find out who dares to plot against our Duke Xing's mansion. Old madam kept silent for a while and said. There were many suspicious points in this matter, so she had to find out. Madam of Duke Xing was her daughter-in-law, and so was the third branch. Moreover, they were all her daughters-in-law. In front of so many people, she could not be partial. In fact, there were 5 branches in Duke Xing's mansion. The first branch, the second branch, and the third branch were all old madam's biological children. The fourth branch and the fourth branch were born of concubines. Old madam did not want to see these concubines being born of concubines, so she found a mistake early and separated the 2 branches. Thus, the whole Duke Xing's mansion was born of her legal wife. She naturally did not care about the third daughter-in-law as much as the second daughter-in-law, but she was much better than the former Infanta Qinghua. Moreover, in front of Rui and great elder princess, old madam had to be fair. Yes, mother. I will go and find out the coachman now. The coachman has just been in the mansion for a short time. I think he is a good man, so I asked him to drive away my carriage. Who would have thought that such a thing would happen? Madam of Duke Xing said to old madam. After saying that, she came over and reached out to pull Xiao Caihuan and Xiao Caihuan up personally. She said with distress, "Don't kneel now. Your mother is still lying in bed, and you have to serve her. Third sister-in-law will feel sorry for you if you make such a mess. Go and see your mother first. Second aunt will handle this matter. I will definitely find out the origins of the coachman and the old maid. I won't let your mother be hit by the coachman for nothing." Her words were very gentle, as if she really cared about them. She didn't cover up for the coachman and the old woman at all. She was very calm. Xiao Caihuan and Xiao Kailing looked at each other and hesitated. Could it really have nothing to do with second aunt? Madam of Duke Xing, why don't you go and catch the coachman as soon as possible, lest he gets the news and runs away? Rui and great elder princess said coldly. I will send someone to catch him right away. Madam of Duke Xing said with a flattering smile. Then she ordered an old maid behind her, and the old maid left in a hurry. Old madam, you have to give me an explanation for this matter. The first miss of Qin's mansion actually has connections with people in your mansion. A coachman is obviously not enough. It is impossible for a small coachman to collude with the first miss of Qin's mansion, and then help the first miss of Qin's mansion to plot against Duke Xing's mansion and pretend to be my son's daughter, right? Rui and great elder princess looked up at old madam with cold and majestic eyes. The coachman pretended to be Xiao Zhang's daughter, but the bluegrass seal obviously belonged to Infanta Qinghua. What she said was not wrong. But if they only talked about Xiao Zhang's daughter, old madam could still say that this matter had nothing to do with Rui and great elder princess. But if they talked about Infanta Qinghua's daughter, it had something to do with Rui and great elder princess. Don't worry, great elder princess. We will give you an explanation. Old madam's face became more and more ugly. Then hurry up. Come on, take this old maid away. Rui and great elder princess stood up and said. Two old maids behind her went over and pulled the old maid who had been pushed in. What do you mean, great elder princess? Old madam sneered. Nothing. Since there is a coachman in your mansion, I naturally have to ask the old maid who guards the carriage. This matter is related to Qinghua and her husband. It should be reasonable for me to have one suspect on each side of your mansion. Rui and great elder princess said indifferently. Old madam was so angry that she trembled all over. They were found in Duke Xing's mansion. Before the people of Duke Xing's mansion could ask them, they were taken away by Rui and great elder princess and said that they should have one suspect on each side. It was obvious that she did not trust Duke Xing's mansion. But now Rui and great elder princess was right. Qin Yuru pretended to be the daughter of Xiao Jiang and Infanta Qinghua. Great elder princess, do as you please. Old madam almost gnashed her teeth and said. Then I will leave. Tomorrow, old madam, please open the ancestral hall and record Zhuozhuo in the family tree. If old madam still thinks that Zhuozhuo's identity is still suspicious, I can actually take Zhuozhuo back to the princess's mansion. Great elder princess looked at old madam with sharp eyes, as if she did not see the anger on old madam's face. After saying that, she left with the old maid. The old maid of Duke Xing's mansion who was caught wanted to ask for help, but a handkerchief had been stuffed in her mouth. Then she was taken out by two old maids. Old madam was so angry that her face turned livid. She patted the table heavily with her hand, which shook an apple in the fruit bowl above. It rolled to the corner of the table and then fell heavily to the ground. You go to investigate this matter. You must find out who wants to hurt our Duke Xing's mansion. Old madam almost squeezed these words out of her teeth. Although she said it to Madam of Duke Xing, she stared at the back of Rui and great elder princess who left in front of her with more and more indignation. This was her Duke Xing's mansion, not Great Elder Princess's mansion. Rui and Great Elder Princess actually ignored her existence, but it seemed that this matter really had something to do with Duke Xing's mansion. Mother, rest assured. I will go to investigate it now. Madame of Duke Xing also looked at the back of Rui and Great Elder Princess. She was afraid and secretly wiped a cold sweat. Fortunately, she listened to her daughter's words and chose new people who might be involved. When she instructed them to do things, she did not directly send her own people. She was afraid that this kind of thing would be involved. Moreover, what these two people did was reasonable. The old maid who was taken away by Rui and Great Elder Princess was really an old maid who was in charge of the carriage and did not allow anyone to get close to the carriage. It happened so suddenly that Madame of Duke Xing could not free herself for a moment. Although she also guessed that Qin Yuru should have taken some measures, otherwise it was impossible that third madam was so seriously injured, but Qin Yuru just twisted her neck. But at that time, she had no time to check Qin Yuru's carriage. Later, things happened one after another, so she had no time to check it. So she sent an old maid to find the new old maid in the mansion and asked her to guard the carriage. She only said that no one could check the carriage of Qin's mansion casually. Of course, the reason was that it was the carriage of another mansion. From this point of view, she did not do anything wrong. After thinking it through, Madame of Duke Xing breathed a sigh of relief. She said goodbye to old madam and hurried to find the coachman. She had already dealt with the coachman and believed that he should have left the capital city at this time. The purpose of giving him such a large sum of money was to let him bump into the carriage of Qin's mansion. This was handled by her, so she had arranged an escape route early and would not leave any clues. But even so, she still had to seriously investigate and find the coachman. Madam, bad news. The coachman ran away. Chapter 444. Run away. Chase them. I want to see them alive and dead. Old madam also heard it in the room. She was so angry that her face turned green. Wasn't this what Rui and Great Elder Princess meant? Yes, mother. I'll find them right away. Madame of Duke Xing said anxiously. Looking at Madame of Duke Xing leaving in a hurry, old madam's face darkened. Did she treat her daughter-in-law so well that she made mistakes again and again? Grandma. Xiao Keiling said with a cry. Old madam waved her hand impatiently and said, Go back first and take care of your mother. Your second aunt will find out the truth. Seeing that old madam was angry, the two sisters looked at each other helplessly and didn't dare to say anything. They could only leave with grievances and then hurried back to the third madam's courtyard. What? They ran away. They ran away yesterday without anyone knowing. Hearing her two daughters' words, the third madam, who was lying on the bed, looked pale and angry. She was not stupid and thought more than her two daughters about some things. The servants of Duke Xing's mansion had always been very standard. If someone disappeared, shouldn't it be reported to Madame of Duke Xing early? How could it be possible that they didn't find out until now? Shouldn't such an important person be locked up and questioned yesterday? Originally, she just suspected it, but now she was 60% or 70% sure that it had something to do with Madame of Duke Xing. But she was no match for Madame of Duke Xing in the past, and she was not as dignified as Madame of Duke Xing in front of old Madame. Compared with Madame of Duke Xing, who was old Madame's niece and had been raised by her since childhood, the third Madame was no match for her. What was more, now the whole Duke Xing's mansion was managed by Madame of Duke Xing. Her third branch was much weaker than the second branch, and her husband was not as capable as Duke Xing. Now he was just a nominal position, neither high nor low. Mother, does it have something to do with second aunt? Did second aunt deliberately let them go? Xiao Keiling said indignantly. Xiao Caihuan said unhappily. Although Xiao Caihuan didn't say anything, she also meant this on her face. The third madam gritted her teeth and thought for a while. She stretched out her hand from the bed and shook it with difficulty. Caihuan, Keiling, it has nothing to do with you. Since your second aunt has gone to investigate, let her investigate it. Not to mention her two daughters, she didn't even have a chance to fight against her second sister-in-law. The third madam would not allow her two daughters to contradict Madam of Duke Xing. At that time, before he could explain the matter, he would be accused of not respecting his elders. His two daughters were about to discuss marriage, so his reputation could not be damaged at all. She could only keep this matter in mind and wait for another chance to talk about it. The first branch had a daughter, and this daughter was recognized by Rui and Great Elder Princess. Judging from Rui and Great Elder Princess's strong attitude, she must be on the side of this child. Although the third madam did not directly see this farce, she forced herself to ask someone to find out what had happened. The second miss of Ningyuan Army General's mansion was a delicate girl. She was an orphan without parents, but she defeated the first miss of Ningyuan Army General's mansion, who was supported by Duke Yong's mansion and even colluded with her second sister-in-law. This showed that it was unusual. The second branch had always been domineering. Not only the second sister-in-law, but also the two children of the second branch. At present, the first branch had the support of Rui and Great Elder Princess and the intelligent Qin Wanru. It seemed that Duke Xing's mansion would be lively. That was good. She didn't do anything for the time being and waited for the opportunity. Mother, I think this matter has something to do with second aunt. Let her investigate it. Xiao Kailing felt that her mother had been deceived, so she took the third madam's hand and said, "Shut up. What nonsense are you talking about?" The third madam's face turned serious. She had made up her mind that her daughters could not be involved in this matter. Not to mention her two daughters, even she was not a match for the second madam of Duke Xing's mansion for the time being. Luo Kailing was startled. Seeing her mother's face was as pale as snow, she immediately panicked and cried aggrievedly, "Mother, Huan, teach her well and let her know what it means to respect the elders. Since your second aunt has intervened in this matter, you two can't do it anymore." The third madam turned to her eldest daughter and said with difficulty, "Mother, I understand." Xiao Caihuan also had doubts. But seeing that her mother was really angry, she didn't dare to talk back and hurriedly pulled Luo Kailing to stop her from continuing. Seeing her mother and sister say so, Xiao Kailing was angry and aggrieved. She felt that she was wholeheartedly for her mother, but her mother rebuked her. So she stood up and ran out in tears. Seeing her little daughter run away angrily, the third madam wanted to get up, but she not only had no strength, but also pulled her wound, so she fell on the bed again in pain. "Mother!" Luo Caihuan screamed and hurriedly came to help her. Go and check on your sister. Don't let her get into trouble." The third madam gasped and said. At this time, the whole mansion was in a mess, and old madam must be annoyed. She was afraid that her little daughter was not sensible and really rushed to Madam of Duke Xing to say something. In this case, old madam would not help her daughter. "Yes, mother, I'll go right away." Xiao Caihuan also understood this and hurriedly ran out. When Rui and Great Elder Princess found Qin Wanru, she had freshened up with the help of two servant girls and changed into a set of clothes sent by Madam of Duke Xing to show her kindness. The clothes were very beautiful and almost the right size. The gorgeous embroidery patterns and the golden threads on it made the robe not only beautiful but also very conspicuous. The two wide robes that fluttered in the air were very eye-catching. Seeing Qin Wanru wearing this clothes, Rui and Great Elder Princess looked a little better. Her granddaughter should wear such gorgeous clothes. Seeing Rui and Great Elder Princess come in, Qin Wanru, who was sitting in front of the dressing table and letting Chu Lu stir her hair, stood up and saluted to Rui and Great Elder Princess. "Do you still have a headache? Why do you wash your hair now?" Rui and Great Elder Princess pulled her to sit down, looked at her black hair and asked. "It's warm during the day and cold at night. It's easy to feel uncomfortable. Now I don't have a headache. It's all right." Qin Wanru said with a smile, and her eyebrows and eyes were soft and gentle. She was originally delicate. Because of her young age, she had not fully grown up. Among the misses, because of her short and childish appearance, she was not as eye-catching as those bright misses. However, this kind of well-behaved look was unique. When Rui, a great elder princess, looked at her with her watery eyes, she felt that her whole heart was melted. Such a beautiful and well-behaved girl. She didn't know what the old woman of Duke Xing's mansion was thinking. Why did she think the first miss of Qin's mansion was pleasing to the eye, but she didn't like Qin Wanru? It's good that it doesn't hurt. Just now I went to the old madam of Duke Xing's mansion and told her to ask the patriarch to open the ancestral hall tomorrow. She also agreed. But just now I heard that it was premeditated that the first miss of Qin's mansion bumped into the third madam of Duke Xing's mansion. There are several quilts in the carriage. Rui, a great elder princess's face darkened. Several quilts? Does it mean that she had planned to bump into the carriage long ago? How could she have such a great ability? Qin Wanru was shocked by this matter and said to herself in surprise. That's right. Not to mention her, even Ning Yuan army general can't meddle in Duke Xing's mansion. Their family has just been in the capital city for a short time. Not everyone can meddle in Duke Xing's mansion. Rui, a great elder princess's face became colder and colder, and she sneered. She saw it very clearly. Madam of Duke Xing couldn't absolve herself from the guilt and could never be clean. Afraid that Qin Wanru would be anxious, Rui, a great elder princess, comforted her. Don't worry. This matter can't be rushed for a while. Two daughters of the third branch of Duke Xing's mansion went to check the carriage and were stopped by an old maid. This old maid is here with me now. An old maid stopped us from checking. Qin Wanru raised her watery eyes and looked at Rui, a great elder princess. Yes, if an old maid doesn't have the master's order, how dare she do this? Rui, a great elder princess, snorted coldly. Of course, she didn't believe that there was such a bold old maid. Qin Wanru didn't say anything. After thinking for a while, she held Rui, a great elder princess's hand, and said coquettishly, Grandma, please give that old maid to third madam. Give it to the third branch of Duke Xing's mansion. Rui, a great elder princess, frowned in confusion. You see, this old maid just received an order to guard the carriage over there and not allow people to look through it at will. Even if it is Qin Yuru's carriage, it can also be said to be the carriage of another mansion, so it can't be allowed to be looked through at will. Otherwise, other families won't dare to come to Duke Xing's mansion. Qin Wanru said with a charming smile. Her watery eyes were leisurely, and her fluttering long eyelashes covered the little bit of darkness in her eyes. That's true, but there is something in Qin Yuru's carriage. If I don't let her see it, she will feel guilty. Rui, a great elder princess, thought for a while and said seriously. But that old maid definitely doesn't know anything. She just received an order to do this job well. Even if you go to the person who gave the order, she is not wrong. She just wants someone to guard the carriage of the other mansion and not allow people in the mansion to look through it at will. Qin Wanru smiled sweetly and continued. Rui, a great elder princess, was silent for a while and then nodded. This was indeed reasonable. No mansion would allow people in their family to look through the carriage of another mansion at will. So, it is useless for you to get this old maid. Qin Wanru said softly with a smile. Should I just let her go like this? Rui, a great elder princess, said unwillingly. How can you? Since we have caught her, we can't just let her go like this. You can send her to third madam. If there is anyone else who can find some clues, third madam is the only one who can. Moreover, she is a victim, so it is reasonable for her to ask about the situation. Qin Wanru explained. Rui, a great elder princess, was not familiar with Duke Xing's mansion. Even if she caught this old maid, she would not get anything in the end. But third madam was different. Although she was not as good as Madam of Duke Xing, she had lived in this mansion for so many years, so she always had some people who could turn over some things. Chapter 445. Because of this, the second branch and the third branch of Duke Xing's mansion were definitely estranged. Although the third madam of Duke Xing's mansion only gave birth to 2 daughters, she was not a simple person since she could sit firmly in the position of the third madam of Duke Xing's mansion. She did not want to see the united Duke Xing's mansion when she came back. Looking at her granddaughter, Rui, and great elder princess, who had been domineering all her life, felt her eyes turn red. She reached out and touched Qin Wanru's hair with pity. There were still some water stains on her hair. Under her hair, she raised her tender and white face. She looked at Rui and great elder princess with a sweet smile, which made people feel sorry for her. Her daughter, Qinghua, was much older than her, but she wasn't as sensible as she was. It was all because she had a mother by her side. Her granddaughter, on the other hand, not only did she have no parents, she was also bullied. If it weren't for her intelligence, she would have lost her reputation and even lost her life. Since she met Xiao Huai, Rui, and great elder princess knew everything. When they were in Jiangzhou, her granddaughter was almost ruined. Madame D and Qin Yuru attacked her again and again. Qin Huayong's greed made her feel distressed. This child was forced to grow up. As long as she thought of this, Rui and great elder princess felt distressed. Her granddaughter should have been pampered and grew up in the palm of her hand. Zhuozhuo, you have grandma in the future. I won't let anyone bully you anymore. Rui and great elder princess choked with sobs. She reached out and held Qin Wanru in her arms, even ignoring her hair which was still wet. Grandma. Qin Wanru murmured, and her nose was also very sour. After 2 lives, she finally had the feeling of recognizing her family, so that she was no longer lonely and helpless. She not only had her grandma, but also her younger brother. Biting her lips, her eyes couldn't help turning red. Although she was strong, she couldn't help crying at this time, and more tears fell. She couldn't help calling out, "Grandma." Seeing the grandmother and granddaughter crying in each other's arms, the servant girls on both sides hurriedly came to persuade them and finally separated them. "It's up to you. Send the old maid to third madam." Rui and great elder princess wiped her eyes with a handkerchief and said decisively, "Yes, this old servant will send someone to deliver it now." Nanny Gao answered, turned around and walked out of the room. She said something to the 2 people who were holding the old maid of Duke Xing's mansion outside. The 2 of them left with the old maid of Duke Xing's mansion. When they returned to the house, both grandfather and grandson had calmed down and wiped away the tears on their faces. A maid hurriedly ran over and said, "Great elder princess, our Madam Dowager invites you to dinner." "You're welcome. I'll use it with your 5th miss." Rui and great elder princess said impatiently. She didn't want to see the face of old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion at all. "Yes." The maid didn't dare to say more and left. After a while, the kitchen sent a sumptuous lunch. After Qin Wanru accompanied Rui and great elder princess to have some, she asked the servants to take it away. "Grandma, you can go back first and come here tomorrow morning," Qin Wanru said softly. She knew that Rui and great elder princess didn't like Duke Xing's mansion, so she stayed here to accompany her. "I'm worried about you staying here. Why don't you go to my mansion with me first and come here with me tomorrow?" Rui and great elder princess thought for a while and said, "Grandma, it's not polite." Qin Wanru comforted her softly, "Don't worry, it will be fine. I'm not in good health now, so they dare not really stimulate me. At most, they will talk about the opening of the ancestral hall tomorrow. The opening of the ancestral hall should be prepared today. Although the elders would come here tomorrow, some necessary things should be prepared early today. When everything was ready, she would even need to do something." Okay, I'm also impatient to see them do things." Rui and great elder princess thought for a while and said. Although she was reluctant to leave Qin Wanru, thinking of her suffering since childhood, she couldn't help but be obedient to her. "Grandma, you also have to pay more attention to Hao's safety." Qin Wanru thought for a while and her face became slightly cold. "They want to hurt Hao. Rui and Great Elder Princess's face changed dramatically. Maybe. In the past, Hao was alone and had a reputation of being disobedient and arrogant. The first branch of Duke Xing's mansion also existed in name only. But in the future, there will be me and Hao in the first branch. Qin Wanru reminded Rui and Great Elder Princess implicitly. She also thought that Hao had an accident when she disappeared last time. Later, she recalled several times and remembered the specific time when Hao disappeared. Qin Wanru always felt that she was not completely clear about the things in the last life. There were some fragments, which made her clearly know that she was missing some memories. In the last life, Hao had an accident after Qin Yuru returned to Duke Xing's mansion, and then Rui and Great Elder Princess had an accident. Rui and Great Elder Princess immediately understood and said with a fierce look, "I know, I will ask someone to protect Hao. The title of Duke Xing's mansion originally belongs to your father. Even if your father had an accident, there is still your brother. Why does the second branch have the title? Although I fought for your brother before, I didn't pay close attention to the palace. I thought that your brother is still young. Even if he has such a title, he should grow up peacefully. I didn't expect that it made some people think that the title of Duke Xing's mansion really belongs to the second branch. Asking for the title of heir of Duke Xing's mansion. Don't they have the face to do it?" Rui and Great Elder Princess remembered that the emperor told her that Duke Xing's mansion asked for the title of heir of Duke Xing's mansion again. At that time, she didn't think much about it. She just wanted Hao to grow up well, so she didn't say anything. "Grandma, please send someone to find out what happened to my father and my mother. Was it really an accident? Why did my mother return to Duke Xing's mansion? They were also in the chaos, but my mother only had a few maids around her, and they were not as obvious as my father. Why did my mother finally find my father but not my mother? Who was sent by Duke Xing's mansion at that time? How did they find my mother?" Qin Wanru thought for a while and said. Her mother was separated from her father first, and her father had an accident later. In fact, if she found her mother and then came to find her father, would the ending be completely different? Questions were thrown out one after another, which shocked Rui and Great Elder Princess. Looking at her delicate granddaughter in front of her, she suddenly felt that she really neglected too much. For a moment, she felt sad. Gritting her teeth and swallowing the sadness in her eyes, Rui and Great Elder Princess nodded and said, "Zhuozhuo, don't worry. I will definitely find out this matter. If it is really related to the second branch of Duke Xing's mansion, I will fight them to death." Seeing that Rui and Great Elder Princess understood, Qin Wanru showed a smile on her face, but her eyes became more and more gloomy. If her parents had an accident, who would benefit the most? Needless to say, it was the second branch of Duke Xing's mansion. Her second uncle became Duke Xing, and the person who wanted to hurt her became Madam of Duke Xing, and then they wanted to kill her brother. In addition, she died in the hands of Xiao Yanru, the first miss of Duke Xing's mansion in her last life. All these made her come to a conclusion that her parents might also have been plotted against by the second branch. After Rui and Great Elder Princess left, Qin Wanru sat in front of the window and continued to let Chu Lu stir her hair. In the makeup mirror, the girl's beautiful face was a little gloomy, even malicious. Yu Jie and Chu Lu did not dare to speak. They just gently combed her hair and then helped her to the bed to rest. However, Qin Wanru did not sleep well this time. It seemed that she had been awake all the time, but also seemed to have been asleep all the time. In her dreams, she saw many scenes of herself in the palace. She, who had just entered the palace, was very timid and panicked at the slightest movement. It seemed that she hid behind a cluster of blooming flowers and bumped into someone. After that, she saw a pair of cold eyes, but a gentle call came to her ears, "Zhuozhuo, Zhuozhuo," but why did she hide? Even if she hid, she was not afraid. Looking around, she seemed to be waiting for someone, but there was no one. Only the voice came to her ears. Qin Wanru felt very uncomfortable. She felt that she was dreaming. She had fallen into the dream of her last life. She wanted to wake up, but she felt weak all over. It seemed that she could not even move her fingers, but she just knew that she was dreaming. She wanted to wake up. She didn't want to dream. She used all her strength just to move her fingers and scare the dream away. However, she still looked like an outsider, squatting behind the cluster of flowers. She was a little panicked and looked around expectantly. She didn't know whether she was hiding or waiting. Waiting? Who would she be waiting for? Suddenly, there was a bang in her ears. Something broke. She felt relaxed and the dream was broken. Miss. This time, she heard it clearly. It was right beside her ears. She slowly opened her eyes and looked at Yujia's concerned face in front of her. She moved her hands with difficulty. Although it was difficult, it was obvious that she could move them. She escaped from the dream. What's the matter? She just woke up, and her voice was hoarse and uncomfortable. Prince Chen is here. Yujia reached out to help her and said. Chu Luchen. What was he doing here at this time? Qin Wanru's reaction was a little slow. She thought that it seemed to have nothing to do with him. What was he doing here? Prince Chen said that he had something important to ask you. He said that it was the Empress Dowager's order. He is waiting in the front hall now. Duke Xing and Madame of Duke Xing are waiting with him outside. Chu Lu also came over to help Yujie to help Qin Wanru up. Then they helped her, who was still confused, to the dressing table. The two servant girls helped Qin Wanru to dress up. The servant girls sent by Madame of Duke Xing were still guarding at the door outside. They had implicitly explained that Prince Chen's identity was incomparably noble and reminded them to act quickly. In the front hall, Chu Luchen was sitting in the middle of the seat of honor. He was dressed in a purple robe with several golden edges on the cuffs and collar. Under the purple golden crown, he had a handsome and elegant face. Except that his face was too pale and he was obviously sick, Prince Chen's appearance was almost flawless. Incomparably handsome was the only word that Madame of Duke Xing thought of. Even though she often went in and out of the imperial palace, she was not familiar with Prince Chen. She rarely saw him and did not expect that one day, Prince Chen would come to her mansion. Chapter 446. Chu Luchen looked at Madame of Duke Xing with a gentle smile. It seemed that he just said it casually, but Xiao Xuanzi, who was standing behind him, immediately stared at Madame of Duke Xing with a pair of gloomy eyes. One of them was a gentle and elegant young man, while the other was as gloomy as a poisonous snake. This kind of feeling made the smile on Madame of Duke Xing's face a little stiff. She hurriedly saluted and said, "Please forgive me, Your Highness. It's just that I seldom see Your Highness, so I was shocked for a moment." "Madame of Duke Xing, you are too surprised." The smile on Chu Liuchen's face was still there, and he even felt that he became more gentle. "It's just that Madame of Duke Xing pays so much attention to me, which will make me think that Madame of Duke Xing likes me." His tone was extremely frivolous, which should not be said by such a gentle young man. Madame of Duke Xing blushed with shame and indignation. How could her daughter marry this invalid? Moreover, he was a worthless invalid. She twisted the handkerchief in her hand fiercely and hurriedly replied, "Your Highness, you must be joking. Your Highness, you are so talented that no one can imagine you. Who would want a dead man with no future and no life? No one can imagine me, but your Duke Xing's mansion can. I heard that the first miss is not only beautiful, but also," Chu Liuchen's words became more and more frivolous. It was hard for others to believe that such words were said by him. He was like a young man who walked out of an ink painting, so beautiful that he seemed to be a person in a painting. However, his words were so tiresome and even made people feel uncomfortable. It was very uncomfortable. However, his words to the first Miss Xiao, who was said to be the most knowledgeable and polite in the capital city, were almost frivolous, as if he was just talking about an ordinary woman without any respect. "Your Highness, you must be joking. Your Highness, do you have any orders from the Empress Dowager this time? Duke Xing had to help Chu Luchen. If he continued to say like this, his daughter's reputation would be damaged. Compared to his son, he also had high hopes for his daughter. He could not allow his daughter to have even the slightest flaw. Duke Xing is really bold. Our prince hasn't finished speaking, and he dares to stop our master from speaking. Xiao Xuanzi sneered and took over the topic. Chu Luchen didn't say anything. He just put the teacup in his hand heavily on the table. His eyes were cold, and the smile on his face, which was as gentle as the spring breeze in March, immediately disappeared. What does Duke Xing mean? Could it be that this prince cannot speak well of the young miss of your residence? Does your young miss not intend to marry into the royal family? That's good. After this prince returns to the palace, I'll ask imperial grandmother to bestow a marriage for the young miss of your mansion. She can pick any one of them, as long as it's not from the imperial family. The young master, who had been smiling sweetly just a moment ago, had turned cold in just a moment. On his handsome and exquisite facial features, his slightly raised phoenix eyes had a sinister and treacherous look. What he said shocked Duke Xing and his wife even more. They had devoted more effort to this daughter than their son. How could she be ruined by Chu Luchen, the damn invalid? Duke Xing glanced at Madame, and Madame of Duke Xing immediately understood. She hurriedly knelt down and said, "Your Highness, how dare I boast like this? It's the royal family's grace to choose a good person or not. We absolutely dare not have any wishful thinking. Just now, I was worried that the Empress Dowager had some orders, so I was anxious and impolite. Please forgive me, Your Highness." Duke Xing clenched his hands tightly behind his back, and the blue veins on his hands were exposed. But there was a smile on his face, and he also apologized, "Your Highness, I'm really impolite. If you want to punish me, you can punish me." He was just a dying invalid, but he dared to deceive him like this. But these were his true thoughts. Duke Xing hid them deeply and did not reveal any of them. He just showed a trace of panic. At this time, he had to admit defeat. He thought that the invalid would not go too far. He was an important minister of the imperial court, and the invalid could not deal with him easily. He was afraid that the damn invalid could not deal with him, but he went to deal with his daughter. This was what Duke Xing was most afraid of. His daughter was raised with a lot of charm, and she would be respected and noble in the future. How could Chu Luchen think about her? As expected, Chu Liuchen's face became kind, and a gentle smile appeared on his face again, which made him look like a noble and beautiful young man, as if the gloomy and treacherous young master just now was not him. Imperial grandmother just asked me to come and see the fifth miss, who has returned to the family. Imperial grandmother also said that she would send someone to come and see her in order to appease Rui, and great elder princess. Chu Luchen stretched out his slender fingers, gently knocked on the table, and said with a gentle and indifferent look. It turned out that he was just invited by Rui, and great elder princess, to do her a favor. Madame of Duke Xing secretly wiped her cold sweat. "Madam, please get up," Chu Luchen said with a smile. Xiao Xuanzi walked out from behind him, which meant that he was going to help Madame of Duke Xing in person. Madame of Duke Xing did not dare to let Xiao Xuanzi help her. She hurriedly stood up, and then bowed to Chu Luchen. "Prince, thank you for your kindness. Is Qin Wanru really the fifth miss of your mansion?" Chu Luchen was curious. He turned his attention from the first miss of Duke Xing's mansion to Qin Wanru, and he seemed to be interested in her. Duke Xing breathed a sigh of relief. He was afraid that Chu Luchen was interested in his daughter, which was also an important reason why he deliberately sent his daughter away from the capital city and went to the Yuhui nunnery outside the city. His daughter did not want to marry this invalid, but he was afraid that this invalid would like his daughter. Duke Xing was very clear about how much the Empress Dowager and the Emperor valued this invalid, so he did not want to have anything to do with Chu Luchen at all. Duke Xing thought it was good to draw Chu Liuchen's attention from his daughter to Qin Wanru. He even thought of the thing that Chu Luchen had saved Qin Wanru at the gate of the palace. If he made good use of it, could he make them a couple? If the two of them became a couple, his daughter would be safe. As the daughter of lineal descent of Duke Xing's mansion, it was impossible for them to marry the same person. Moreover, one would be the wife and the other would be the concubine. Moreover, his daughter was the most distinguished eldest daughter of lineal descent. After thinking about this, Duke Xing winked at Madame of Duke Xing. They had been husband and wife for many years, so they still had this tacit understanding. Of course, Wanru is a child of our mansion. Yes, she is the daughter of my elder brother and Infanta Qinghua. There is no doubt about this. Rui and great elder princess and my mother-in-law have said so, so it can be seen that it is true. This child is also a poor child. Although she is beautiful, she has been living outside. If she had been raised in the capital city, she would definitely be more outstanding than Ru. Madame of Duke Xing wiped the corners of her eyes with a handkerchief. Then she felt sad. Is she really the daughter of your mansion? Chu Luqian still seemed to be unconvinced and asked again. Yes, she is indeed. Madame of Duke Xing admitted it at once. As for Qin Wanru's family background, after she sent 2 people to slander her but failed, it had become a conclusion. She could not make an issue of it even if she wanted to. It was better to admit it directly now, so that people would not doubt her. If Chu Luqian wanted the daughter of Duke Xing's mansion by force, this one could also be a good match. A dying patient and an illegitimate child were just right. Duke, Madam, 5th Miss is here. An old maid came in and reported. Invite her in, invite her in. Madame of Duke Xing's eyes lit up and she said repeatedly. She finally felt relieved in her heart. She was afraid that Chu Luqian would get her daughter involved. Qin Wanru walked in slowly with Yujie. After entering the inner room, she first bowed to Chu Luqian, and then to Duke Xing and his wife. Then she stood aside obediently without saying anything. For a moment, the room became strangely quiet, and no one knew what to say for a while. Madame of Duke Xing reacted quickly. She coughed in a low voice, stepped forward with a smile and said, Wanru, Prince Qin came to see you with Empress Dowager's order. Thank you, Empress Dowager. Qin Wanru did not know what Chu Luqian came for, so she responded respectfully in a soft voice. Madame of Duke Xing and Duke Xing, can you leave for a while? I have something Imperial Grandmother wants to ask 5th Miss in private. Chu Luqian said with a smile, looking handsome and elegant. Yes, we'll leave now. Duke Xing said in a hurry. After exchanging glances with Madame of Duke Xing, they left together. They did not suspect anything else. Empress Dowager might ask Qin Wanru some specific information. Of course, this was all for the sake of Rui and Great Elder Princess. Rui and Great Elder Princess and Empress Dowager's sister-in-law had an extremely harmonious relationship. Of course, if Qin Wanru and Chu Luqian liked each other, they would also be very willing. Without hesitation, they retreated to the wing room on the side and waited for them to finish talking. Only Chu Luqian, Qin Wanru and her servants were left in the hall. Chu Luqian pointed to the chair on the side and said, Come and sit down. Qin Wanru sighed helplessly and could only sit on the chair. She raised her watery eyes with a trace of ignorance as if she had just woken up, looking extremely gentle. Of course, it was just the surface gentleness. Chu Luqian knew the sharp claws under her gentle appearance. However, he liked it. Prince, why do you come today? Qin Wanru did not believe that Chu Luqian really came for Empress Dowager. Who was he? Even if Empress Dowager had no one to order her, she would not order him. Of course, I come to see your situation. 5th Miss of Duke Xing's mansion. Chu Luqian narrowed his eyes and said with a little light tone, Do you want to live in Duke Xing's mansion? No, and I will not live here. Qin Wanru did not mean to hide anything and shook her head very straightforwardly. Oh, tell me, why? Chu Luqian seemed to be interested. He squinted at her and smiled more and more brightly. It could be seen that he was in a good mood. I am still young. If I stay here, I will be governed by too many people. I will not only have no freedom, but also may be in danger. Qin Wanru turned her watery eyes slightly. The color of her eyes was like clear water, which made her snow-white face more beautiful. Chapter 447. Leave Duke Xing's mansion. Qin Wanru gently bent her lips and said, "Do you need my help?" Chu Luchen smiled lazily, but did not ask her how to leave Duke Xing's mansion. Since she had recognized her ancestors and returned to the clan, as an unmarried girl, it was impossible for her to leave Duke Xing's mansion. "Your Highness, there should be kerosene in your mansion, right?" Qin Wanru tentatively asked. It would be best if there was kerosene. She had planned to ask Yujie to go back to Qin's mansion and secretly ask Shui Rulan to find some. Chu Luchen squinted at her, raised his delicate lips, reached out to knock on the table, and said naturally, "I certainly have it, but what can you exchange for it?" "What do you want, Your Highness?" Qin Wanru thought for a while and asked cautiously. She had not figured out his mind until now. He was imaginative and temperamental, so no one knew what his next thought would be. Although he did not say anything about her, Qin Wanru had a feeling that he almost knew all her tricks, or even if he did not know all of them, he knew about 70% or 80% of them. In front of such a scheming fox, Qin Wanru thought it was easier to ask directly. Seeing that she asked naturally, Chu Luchen smiled, raised his pale lips, and smiled leisurely. "Qin Wanru, do you have anything else that you can bet on me?" "Bet?" Qin Wanru hurriedly collected her mind, and her attitude became more and more sincere. "If Your Highness needs me as a shield and live well, you can better block arrows for Your Highness, so you have to help me live first." Seeing that she seriously opened her clear black and white watery eyes, as if she was thinking for him very seriously, Chu Luchen almost laughed out loud. This girl was clearly expressing the intention that he could only be well when she was well. She looked obedient, but in fact, she was sharpening her claws in the corner. This girl always bullied people with a weak look, but he liked it. "How much kerosene do you want?" Chu Luchen snorted softly and said lazily. "I don't need too much. I just need to start a fire and light a room. Just don't put it out so easily. I also need to borrow a guard." Qin Wanru said bluntly and felt relieved in her heart. It was much safer to take kerosene from Chu Luchen than from Shui Rulan. Although Shui Rulan was in charge of the Qin's mansion, Qin Huayong was also a shrewd man. If he found any clues, it would be troublesome. Although Qin Huayong seemed to be indifferent to her so far, this indifference was because Qin Yuru was his biological daughter. Although he was a little biased, it was understandable that he repeatedly hid some mistakes for his biological daughter, although it was unreasonable. However, Qin Wanru was suspicious. Did Qin Huayong really know nothing about what Madame D and Qin Yuru had done? Was it really only discovered after the fact? As for the guards, it was better than nothing, and it was also convenient to dispatch them. "Come here." Chu Luchen suddenly waved at her. Qin Wanru blinked her watery eyes and looked at him in confusion. "Do you want me to come and invite you?" Chu Luchen stretched out his hand. Qin Wanru stood up helplessly and walked slowly to him. However, Chu Luchen grabbed her slender hand and she was startled. "Child." Chu Luchen ignored her and reached out to take a jade pendant from his arms. He tied it around her slender waist and then patted her slender waist. "Remember to wear it in the future." Qin Wanru subconsciously reached out to take the jade pendant, but was stopped by his hand. The handsome young man raised his face and it was hard to explain. "If this jade pendant is missing a corner, Qin Wanru, you will exchange your life for it." Qin Wanru was startled and hurriedly reached out to hold the jade pendant. The warm jade pendant showed a warmth different from this kind of weather, which made her involuntarily hold it more tightly. "Child, what do you mean by this jade pendant?" Qin Wanru did not dare to think that it was just a jade pendant. When she held it, she felt warmth in it. That kind of warmth was not from Chu Liuchen's body, but it was really born with warmth. She had heard of this kind of jade, a natural warm jade, which had great benefits for people's health. However, she had only heard of it, but had never seen it. There was such a saying, but few people had really seen it. The value of such a jade pendant should be calculated in terms of a city. Keep it for me. Chu Luchen did not loosen his grip on Qin Wanru's hand. He leaned back and Qin Wanru involuntarily got closer to him. She almost fell on him. She hurriedly stretched out her other hand to hold the corner of the table, so that she did not directly bump into Chu Luchen's arms. Child, are you going to hide it? Qin Wanru asked cautiously. She felt that it was necessary to ask clearly at this time. No one knew what he was thinking, so she had to do what he wanted. No need to hide it. Just hang it every day. No matter where you go, you have to hang it. Chu Luchen smiled evilly, then stood up and reached out to pat her head. He said with a bored look, you should grow up quickly. If my shield doesn't grow up, what's the use of it? His words were taken for granted, but it made Qin Wanru want to vomit blood. I'll ask someone to send you kerosene tonight. You can also stay here. It's not too late, is it? Chu Luchen's next sentence immediately diverted her attention, and her blushing face immediately became serious. It's not too late. It's just in time. Qin Wanru nodded and said. Chu Luchen looked down at the girl's pink and delicate little face. Suddenly he smiled slightly and did not say anything. He strode out. Xiao Xuanzi smiled at Qin Wanru and hurriedly followed. But when he walked to the door, Chu Luchen suddenly turned back. The sunshine at the door shone brightly on him, but after he turned around, a long shadow was drawn down, which happened to cover his beautiful and picturesque eyebrows. This made Qin Wanru unable to see the meaning between his eyebrows. Qin Wanru, it's better to enter my mansion directly. In fact, I can also put the shield in the light early. It's still too early. Qin Wanru's face suddenly turned red. Chu Luchen whispered with a smile, then wait for a while. If the time is right, I don't care when it will be. Everything is as you say, Your Highness. Qin Wanru was stunned for a moment and finally said helplessly. Seeing Chu Luchen coming out, Duke Xing and his wife hurriedly came out from the wing room to see him off. After saying goodbye to them, Chu Luchen glanced at Qin Wanru ambiguously and turned to leave. Qin Wanru returned to her residence, and Duke Xing followed her out all the way. Madame of Duke Xing stood where she was, looked at the direction in which Chu Luchen disappeared, and then looked at Qin Wanru's back. Her smiling face just now became cold. Madam, let's go back too. Nanny Xing reminded her. Madame of Duke Xing nodded, but she frowned tightly. She didn't want to see the current situation. After taking a few steps, she said to Nanny Sheng, who followed her closely, do you feel that Prince Chen thinks highly of Qin Wanru? This. I really can't say. It seems so, but it seems not. Nanny Sheng felt uncertain. Because if there was really something between them, Prince Chen and Qin Wanru did not have any contact. When they were here just now, Nanny Xing did not find anything unusual. But if there was really nothing between them, it was heard that Prince Chen almost didn't wake up in order to save Qin Wanru at the gate of the palace. She did not know whether it was a coincidence or something else. Nanny Xing did not dare to draw a conclusion. She can't have anything to do with Prince Chen. Madame of Duke Xing's face became gloomy. Her eyes flashed, and she looked in the direction where Qin Wanru had left. She had thought that with Qin Wanru, she could attract Chu Luchen's attention and make her daughter have a good body. His body was not bad, but now he had another thought. Although Chu Luchen did not have a great future, or he had no future, if Qin Wanru really had something to do with Chu Luchen, she would have something to do with the current Empress Dowager and the Emperor. Even if something happened to Chu Luchen in the future, as long as the Empress Dowager and the Emperor were still there, Qin Wanru would not be so easy to deal with. Madam, don't worry. Won't there be a result in these 2 days? Nanny Xing looked around and saw that all the servant girls and old maids were far away from them. When he was far away from the two of them, he lowered his voice and reminded her. "What if this bitch doesn't die?" Madame of Duke Xing said with cold eyes. "Madam, this is the matter of our Duke Xing's mansion. The elders of the Shao clan can see it clearly. This matter is related to the dignity of the Shao clan. In the future, the daughter of the Shao clan will come at night. Just deal with her directly. If it doesn't work, put her in the woodshed first, and then deal with her." At night, Nanny Xing did not finish her words, but Madame of Duke Xing understood. She took a deep breath, and her face was a little gloomy. She could not let this bitch live. This was the best. "Madam, don't worry. Everything has been prepared. We just need to invite the elders to come tomorrow. Old Madam has sent a message, and they will come tomorrow." Seeing that Madame of Duke Xing's eyebrows were slightly relaxed, Nanny Xing continued to comfort her. "That's good. We can't let this bitch live. Otherwise, in the future, she will definitely make more trouble." Madame of Duke Xing said anxiously in her heart. "Madam, it's not good to keep her like this, right? We have to find a way to kill her." Nanny Xing didn't dare to answer, but when she saw Madame of Duke Xing's cold eyes, she didn't dare to refuse. When she finished speaking, she felt cold sweat on her forehead. If she knew too much about these things, she would die. "Humph, bitch." Madame of Duke Xing's beautiful face was almost twisted. After scolding her fiercely, she walked forward with an extremely vicious look. Nanny Xing followed carefully, but did not dare to say another word, for fear that Madame of Duke Xing would talk to her about this again. She really did not want to talk about this at all. She always felt that she was walking on the edge of a cliff and did not know when she would be killed by Madame or Duke Xing. Chapter 448. In the morning of the next day, the elders of the Shao clan came to the mansion one after another. The official time to be recorded in the genealogy was in the afternoon, and they had to worship the ancestors at noon. Because of the lack of time, the whole Duke Xing's mansion was busy with a lot of things to prepare. Fortunately, it was still the Spring Festival, and a lot of things had been prepared for the Spring Festival. Before the Spring Festival, some things had been preserved after worshipping the ancestors. At this time, there was no need to find other things. Many people of the Shao clan came, and the elders each brought some clansmen. At noon, Duke Xing's mansion held a banquet for 10 tables. There were many doubts about Qin Wanru's identity. They all thought that this daughter of the former heir of Duke Xing's mansion, who appeared inexplicably, was not a fake. They had never heard of her before. Old Madam and Madame of Duke Xing repeatedly verified her identity. In addition, Rui and Great Elder Princess brought Xiao Yuanhao to verify it at noon, which made the clansmen of the Shao clan stop gossiping slowly and dare not talk nonsense anymore. Rui and Great Elder Princess brought Xiao Yuanhao over for a while. She only asked Xiao Yuanhao to see Qin Wanru, and then she left, leaving Xiao Yuanhao to follow Qin Wanru. In the afternoon, the Shao clan would hold the ancestral worship ceremony, so it was inconvenient for Rui and Great Elder Princess to stay here. Xiao Yuanhao followed Qin Wanru like a little tail. Since he knew that Qin Wanru was his biological sister, Xiao Yuanhao's little face had been smiling happily. He did whatever Qin Wanru asked him to do, and he was very obedient. In addition, he had been taught in Rui and Great Elder Princess Mansion for a while, so he behaved politely, which surprised a group of elders who had seen Xiao Yuanhao. In the past, Master Hao was the little devil of Duke Xing's mansion. He could do whatever he wanted at any time without any taboo. The clansmen shook their heads and sighed secretly. Some even said that it was lucky that the former heir of Duke Xing was not here. Otherwise, if the whole Duke Xing's mansion was handed over to Master Hao, the Shao clan would be destroyed. From this point of view, it was a good thing that the former heir of Duke Xing was not here. But was this little master who looked obedient and polite? Was it really the lawless Master Hao? The clansmen were very surprised and began to discuss secretly. It was unknown when there was a rumor outside that Duke Xing's mansion wanted to kill the only bloodline of the former heir of Duke Xing. The members of the Shao family did not take it seriously before. Many of them had seen Master Hao, who was just a hooligan. Old Madam felt sorry for him because he was the bloodline of the former heir of Duke Xing, so she spoiled him like this. However, the current situation made the clansmen suspicious. If this young Master Hao was really incorrigible, why was he so well-behaved and polite? Duke Xing's mansion was very busy, but Qin Wanru was not too busy. She only attended the banquet at noon and met several respectable elders. After that, she took Xiao Yuanhao's hand and went back to the courtyard where she lived temporarily. At this time, the banquet was basically over. Some women and young girls of the Shao clan began to enjoy the flowers in the garden. There were a lot of people here, and they weren't young ladies from aristocratic families, so some rules were no longer needed. Girls from the Shao clan could be seen almost everywhere. The girls were quite happy to have such an opportunity to visit Duke Xing's mansion. Cousin Wanru. A figure suddenly appeared from the rockery, which scared Qin Wanru and made her stop hurriedly. Xiao Yuanhao raised his small face and looked at Qin Wanru. When he was about to speak, he saw Qin Wanru stretch out her white and tender finger and shook it. He immediately stopped talking obediently, but pouted and stared at the figure opposite him unhappily. Cousin Wanru, it's me. The person raised his head and said with a haggard face. It turned out to be Wang Xingxue, but at this time he looked very polite and did not try to get close to Qin Wanru. Child Wang, what's the matter? Qin Wanru slightly raised her eyebrows and asked indifferently. Wang Xingxue was indeed her cousin now, but she didn't want to talk about the old days with him. Cousin Wanru, I hope you can forgive me for what happened between me and my sister before. Wang Xingxue bowed deeply to Qin Wanru and held her hand to the bottom. Child Wang, if you want to talk about the past, then forget it. Isn't it all in the past? Qin Wanru said calmly. In this life, Wang Xingxue and Wang Yishu had a grudge against her. It was said that Wang Yishu was still in a coma in bed and unconscious. As the elder brother, Wang Xingxue should hate her to the core. Cousin Wanru, do you think it's strange that I come to apologize at this time? Wang Xingxue raised his body and looked at Qin Wanru. His smile became more and more bitter and even a little unwilling. After asking himself, he didn't wait for Qin Wanru to ask again and answered himself, Cousin Wanru is now my first uncle's daughter and also the biological granddaughter of Rui, and great elder princess. If I still have any bad thoughts, I'm afraid I can't stay in the capital city anymore. Such an unwilling and bitter look showed that he had to do this and had to apologize. Now was different from the past. The change of Qin Wanru's identity made him no longer have a chance to seek revenge on Qin Wanru. Qin Wanru quietly looked at Wang Xingxue and slightly raised the corner of her mouth. Child Wang, you are too polite. Please go ahead. As she said, she was about to walk around him and leave. Seeing that Qin Wanru was about to leave, Wang Xingxue was anxious. He took 2 steps forward and seemed to reach out to pull Qin Wanru subconsciously. However, he was pushed away by Xiao Yuanhao on one side and staggered for a few steps before standing firm. Cousin Wanru, please forgive me and my sister. After standing firm, Wang Xingxue did not dare to come over again. He looked at Qin Wanru and begged, my sister and I are now living in Duke Xing's mansion. If you don't forgive me, I'm afraid that you will drive us away after the affairs of Duke Xing's mansion are finished. How can my sister leave in such a condition? Without the treatment of the imperial physicians of the Imperial Institute of Medicine, speaking of this, Wang Xingxue could not go on and looked sad. It was said that Wang Yishu's current situation was neither dead nor alive. She had been hanging with medicine, and from time to time, the imperial physicians of the Imperial Institute of Medicine were invited to take her pulse. If Wang Xingxue and his sister had to leave, all of this would be gone and they might really lose their lives. Now at least they were still alive, and there was hope as long as they were alive. Thinking of this, It made sense that Wang Xingxue came to apologize to Qin Wanru now. No matter how much Wang Xingxue hated Qin Wanru before, the change of his status at this time made it impossible for him to take revenge. Even for the sake of his future and his sister, he had to beg Qin Wanru, which was reasonable. Wang Xingxue lost the qualification of the imperial examination in spring because of Qin Wanru, so he must hate Qin Wanru. This kind of hatred of destroying one's future was almost the hatred of destroying one's family. But now Wang Xingxue had to give in, not only for his sister but also for his future. Without the support of Duke Xing's mansion, he could not have a good future. "Child Wang, do you want to beg for my forgiveness? And then stay." Qin Wanru rolled her watery eyes slightly, but her smile did not reach her eyes. "Cousin Wanru, my sister and I are wrong. Cousin Wanru, please be magnanimous and forgive us. Now we have got our retribution." Wang Xingxue apologized again like a gangster, reached out to take out an exquisite box from his arms, and handed it over. "This is a little token of my appreciation. Cousin Hao, please play with it." "What? Is this for me?" Xiao Yuanhao did not understand their previous accident. Seeing Wang Xingxue's flattering look, his heart softened. In the past, when Wang Xingxue saw Xiao Yuanhao in Duke Xing's mansion, he always flattered him and brought some gifts to make friends with him from time to time. "It's for Cousin Hao. I specially selected it from outside. I heard that it has just arrived. It looks like a ship. I promised it to Cousin Hao before, but after I found it, Cousin Hao went to Rui and Great Elder Princess Mansion, so I have no chance to give it to you," Wang Xingxue said with a smile. There was another reason for this. At that time, Wang Xingxue gave an imported product to Old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion. Old Madam liked it very much, and Xiao Yuanhao liked it even more and asked Wang Xingxue for it. In order to please Xiao Yuanhao, Wang Xingxue also agreed. Later, because of a series of changes, this matter was delayed. Now Wang Xingxue took it out, which connected the previous matter. "Sister, can I have it?" Xiao Yuanhao looked up at Qin Wanru's face pitifully, shook her hand carefully, and said in a spoiled manner, "Thank you, child Wang." Qin Wanru nodded. Yujie took a step forward, took the box, and stepped aside. "Then I will leave first." It seemed that because Qin Wanru accepted the gift, Wang Xingxue breathed a sigh of relief, raised his face, and said with a soft smile. This meant that the grudge between Qin Wanru and him and his sister was over. Qin Wanru nodded. Wang Xingxue was overjoyed, bowed to Qin Wanru again, and then turned to leave. After a few steps, he seemed to think of something, looked back, hesitated, and continued to leave. Seeing Wang Xingxue leave, Qin Wanru continued to walk back with a group of people. This scene seemed to be just a formality, and no one took it seriously. Second miss, is this a private gift? In an attic not far from the place where they had talked before, Xiao Jia accompanied several sisters of the clan to sit there and enjoy the scenery, but she had seen what had happened just now. They were far away and couldn't hear their conversation, but they saw clearly that Wang Xingxue left reluctantly in the end. At this time, a young lady couldn't help but ask. "I don't think so. There may be something wrong." Xiao Jia wiped the corners of her mouth with a handkerchief and said indifferently. "How could it not be? I saw it clearly just now. Not only did she give him a gift, but she also left with affection." This kind of thing, another girl of the Xiao clan couldn't help saying. "Yes, how could she do that? That's right. It's improper for her to hold hands with a man. Our Xiao clan values rules the most. How can we let such an unruly woman join us? Did she hook up with him long ago? I've heard that second Miss Qin has a bad reputation." The fact that Qin Wanru became the daughter of the former heir of Duke Xing made the girls of the Xiao clan jealous. At this time, seeing the scene in front of them, they talked about it one after another, and the more they talked, the more similar it was. Chapter 449. In the afternoon, it was very smooth to record her name in the genealogy. When everyone came, they had already known that since Duke Xing's mansion had recognized her, Rui and Great Elder Princess had also recognized her, and it was even said that the Empress Dowager had also sent someone to confirm it. They all believed that Qin Wanru was indeed the daughter of the former heir of Duke Xing who had been living outside. After being officially recorded in the genealogy, Qin Wanru changed her name to Xiao Wanru. Under the names of the former heir of Duke Xing and Infanta Qinghua, she was ranked as the fifth miss in Duke Xing's mansion. There were 3 branches in Duke Xing's mansion, all of which were the legitimate sons of old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion. Now there were only Xiao Wanru and Xiao Yuanhao left in the first branch. One was ranked as the 5th, and the other was ranked as the 3rd. The second branch was the first branch of Duke Xing's mansion, which had 2 daughters and 1 son. 1 son and 1 daughter were the legitimate sons, and the other was the son of a concubine. The 2 daughters were ranked as the first and the second, and the son was also ranked as the first. The third branch had 2 daughters and 1 son of a concubine. The 2 daughters were ranked as the third and the fourth, and the son was ranked as the second. The sons of concubine had been separated early, so the whole Duke Xing's mansion was filled with the bloodline of old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion, and there were not many people. Only the first branch had no parents, so it seemed a little weak. Now there were only 1 son and 1 daughter left, and they were still young. The ceremony of recording the name in the genealogy was quite long. When it was finished, it was already dark, and the weather in winter was darker than usual. At this time, there was naturally a banquet. The banquet in Duke Xing's mansion had been prepared, and the fragrance of wine filled the air. The women ate quickly and wandered casually after finishing early. Most of them came here with their father and brother, and they could not go back before their father and brother recovered. In the afternoon, they had wandered for a while. Many women were unwilling to wander anymore, so they stayed in the banquet hall to drink tea and chat. However, some lively ones could not sit down and continued to wander in the garden. Several misses wandered further and further, and even got lost. They could not find anyone for a while, so they could only go forward in the direction of the street lamps, and were ready to ask the servants of Duke Xing's mansion for directions before going back. Along the way, it was getting darker. The lamps that led the way were originally lit every few steps, but now there was only one at a certain distance. As the distance grew farther and farther, part of the road was dark. Fortunately, there were many women. Everyone was emboldened, so they were not so afraid. "There's someone in front." Suddenly, a sharp-eyed woman pointed ahead and said excitedly. In front of him was a curved lake. In the middle of the lake was a waterside pavilion. Outside the waterside pavilion was a pavilion. There were lights in the pavilion, and there were shadows of people. "Let's go and ask for directions. We finally see someone." Yes, let's go now." Everyone couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. If they continued to walk like this and still couldn't meet anyone, the girls also panicked. The light in front of them was no less than saving them. Everyone hurried over to the lake. As they got closer, they saw clearly that it was a man in the pavilion. This made them slow down again. In such a dark place, there was only a single lantern in the pavilion in the middle of the lake. Wouldn't it be bad if they just ran into it? Just as he was hesitating, someone suddenly whispered, "Look, someone is going over." "Who?" Everyone's gazes followed the direction of her finger. There really was a woman walking over from the waterside pavilion. She was wrapped in a cloak, so they couldn't see clearly who she was. They could only vaguely see the silhouette of a woman. At a time like this, it was a man again. Everyone looked at each other and stopped in their tracks. Some of them even hid behind trees. The woman in the cloak walked slowly along the waterside pavilion to the pavilion. The man who had been sitting in the pavilion stood up excitedly. His face was originally turned away from the group of women. As soon as he turned around, some sharp-eyed people immediately recognized that he was Child Wang Xingxue, who lived in the Xing mansion. The reason why everyone present knew him was that, on the one hand, he was also present when Xiao Wanru returned to the clan and was recorded in the family tree today. He, who was good-looking, immediately became the object of discussion among many women. They all asked who this child was. The news spread quickly. Women's ability to spread rumors was very strong. Immediately, most people knew his identity. Another reason was that some of the people present had witnessed the scene when Wang Xingxue stopped Xiao Wanru. Seeing the woman coming over, Wang Xingxue reached out to hold her in his arms and untied her cloak with the other hand. The cloak was thrown aside and fell to the ground, but no one paid attention to it. The young man and woman hugged each other tightly. From their point of view, they could only see clearly that Wang Xingxue lowered his head and began to kiss the woman. All the women were stunned. "Isn't she the newly recognized fifth Miss Xiao?" Someone in the dark said. "It seems so. This dress, yes, it is her." Everyone's attention immediately fell on the woman. She had her back to the crowd, so they couldn't see her clearly. However, the exquisite and gorgeous clothes, the unique piercings, and the gorgeous color immediately aroused everyone's discussion. The more they talked about it, the more likely it was. It was obviously the clothes that Xiao Wanru was wearing today. Xiao Wanru was an important figure in today's ceremony and also the focus of everyone's attention. The focus of the women's attention was also on her gorgeous and enviable clothes. Each of her clothes was so bright that they were jealous and hated her. They wished they could replace her and become the lineal daughter of the former heir of Duke Xing. How could such beautiful clothes and gorgeous embroidery not attract people's attention? At this time, after a careful discussion, everyone immediately confirmed that the woman in front of them was really Xiao Wanru, the newly recognized fifth miss of Duke Xing's mansion. "It's too shameless. It's really too shameless. Unsightly. What a bitch." The women scolded her in a low voice. Wang Xingxue and the woman were still hugging and kissing each other, looking reluctant to part with each other. The situation between them became more and more passionate. It could be seen at first glance that it was not the first time they had been so passionate. She is now a member of the Xiao family. Such behavior will damage the reputation of the women of the Xiao family. "Let's go and ask the elders to come and have a look now," someone suggested righteously. "Yes, let's go right now. Hurry up." After a discussion, they asked the four women to go back and take the previous way. Then they came quickly to catch the adulterer. They must catch Xiao Wanru and drown her in a pig cage. How could such a bitch be included in the genealogy of the Xiao family? Previously, they just wanted to go all the way forward, but now they realized that they could go back. The four women went back to ask for help. They walked very fast, and coincidentally, they met the servant girl of Duke Xing's mansion not long after. She immediately took them to a shortcut and soon returned to the hall. The elders had almost drunk enough this time and were talking happily. When they suddenly heard such a news, they immediately became furious. They didn't know where Duke Xing had gone. At this time, there was no master. Several elders, who were drunk in high spirits, took them to catch Xiao Wanru and followed the previous women to take a shortcut. For fear of being discovered, they didn't say anything. When they arrived at the place where the previous women were guarding, they looked up and saw a man and a woman hugging each other in the pavilion in the lake. She is indeed the newly recognized fifth miss of Duke Xing's mansion. Someone also recognized the clothes. Such clothes were not something that just anyone could have. Moreover, everyone had seen the clothes before. The two people in the pavilion became more and more intense. The man sat down with the woman in his arms and kept kissing her. Drown the woman in a pig cage. We must drown her. The reputation of the daughters of our Xiao family can't be ruined. Let's drown her before Duke Xing finds out. So many people here have seen it. What are you afraid of? Yes, that's the idea. For all the girls of our Xiao family. They blurted out the words one by one, and their brains, which had been drunk, became excited. In this way, they reached a decision. Several elders led a large group of people to the waterside pavilion angrily. Unfortunately, when a large group of people rushed out, it immediately alerted the people in the waterside pavilion. The man and woman saw a group of people rushing onto the water bridge. The crowd panicked. There was only the lake water in front of her. The woman actually jumped into the water with a splash. Wang Xingxue also seemed to want to jump, but he was timid. After trying a few times, he didn't dare to jump down again and just watched the woman swim to the other side. It was actually not far from the other side. The clansmen of the Shao family didn't expect that the woman had the courage to jump down. After being stunned for a moment, someone ran back. However, they had taken a long detour, and it was even farther to run from here to the other side of the lake. When someone ran to the other side, he only saw a line of water. The people in the pavilion had caught Wang Xingxue. Under the light, it could be clearly seen that it was indeed Wang Xingxue. After tying Wang Xingxue up, they dragged him from the waterside pavilion to the other side. Everyone saw a clear line of water on the ground. It was obvious that someone had come ashore here and then escaped. Chase after her. The elders discussed for a while and felt that this matter couldn't be settled easily, so they continued to chase after her. They must catch the fifth Miss Shao, who had ruined the reputation of the Shao family, and drown her in a pig cage. If people knew that the Miss of the Shao family had secretly met a man in the garden, how could the women of the Shao family discuss marriage in the future? What would others think of the Shao family? At this time, the elders came to their senses and thought that this was the best way. Duke Xing was not here now, so it was a more favorable opportunity to catch Shao Wanru and drown her in a pig cage. Even if Duke Xing knew it and came here, it would be too late. For the reputation of the women of the Shao family, it was right for them to do so. A large group of people took Wang Xingxue and chased after her. Unexpectedly, after taking a few steps, they suddenly saw a fire rising into the sky in front of them. Thick smoke was billowing, and the fire was surging. Chapter 450. Qin Wanru came back before the banquet began. There were too many clansmen, and her status was much lower than that of Duke Xing's mansion, so she didn't need the master of Duke Xing's mansion to accompany her. Only a few important people who were close to her were asked to stay aside. Duke Xing stayed to talk with her, and none of the womenfolk accompanied her. Now Qin Wanru changed her name to Shao Wanru. When she returned to her room, it was late. Shao Yuanhao was sent back. Rui, a great elder princess, was worried that Shao Yuanhao would stay. After the ceremony was over, she sent someone to take Shao Yuanhao away. As for Qin Wanru, there were still 4 rough old maids staying here. When Shao Wanru returned to her room, the dinner had been brought over, but it had not been served yet. It was said that old madam invited it, so Shao Wanru went to old madam's place with her maids. Old madam left very early. She asked Qin Wanru something after she left and then let her go back. When she returned to her courtyard, it was already late. The servant girls served the dinner. It was a little cold now, and Shao Wanru had no appetite. After eating a few mouthfuls, she asked several servant girls and old maids to take it down and eat some more. Miss, the hot water for bathing has been prepared. Do you want to take a bath now? Yujie came in and asked. The hot water was indeed prepared by the servants of Duke Xing's mansion. Shao Wanru nodded, entered the inner room, and sat down on one side without entering the bathtub. There was a strong smell of kerosene in the room, but when the door was closed, it couldn't be smelled from outside. Yujie walked to the back window, opened it, and looked at the night outside. A black shadow suddenly appeared in front of her, which scared her and made her take 2 steps back. It was a guard dressed in black. His expression was cold and stern as he briefly recounted what had happened. In the lake pavilion, Wang Xingxue was meeting a woman who wore the same clothes as the 5th Mississippi. After being discovered, the woman jumped into the lake, went ashore, and came here. A large group of elders of the Shao family chased after her. It seemed that they wanted to drown the 5th Miss in the pond to protect the reputation of the daughters of the Shao family. Light the fire. Xiao Wanru stood up with her cold and calm eyes. Although the situation was a little different from what she had guessed, it was not far from the truth. He really wanted to kill her. Yujie hurriedly pulled her out of the room. The guard took out a match from his bosom and lit it with a wave of his hand. He threw the match on the carved big bed in the room. Immediately, the fire rose to the sky. He took the opportunity to light other places and then moved away from the window. The thick smoke had illuminated the sky in this area. "Madam, if we wait any longer, she will die." Nanny Xing stood at the back window of Madame of Duke Xing's room, looked in the direction of Qin Wanru's courtyard and said in a low voice. There was no one else in the room except her and Madame of Duke Xing. Madame of Duke Xing leaned on the couch. Hearing Nanny Xing's words, she looked a little complacent. "That's the courtyard for an heir's wedding. We've prepared it for so long, how could we let that lowly girl have it so easily?" Madame of Duke Xing raised the corner of her mouth sarcastically. She just wanted her to stay for a while and let Rui, and great elder princess, see her affection for Xiao Wanru. After today's matter, this courtyard would still belong to Xiao Hua then. It's just that she has been living here for a few days that she has become dirty. Madame of Duke Xing pressed her face with a handkerchief and sighed softly. Of course. After this matter is settled, Madame can slowly adjust it. After the first young master's marriage is settled, there will be a period of time. At that time, no one will mention the fifth miss again. Nanny Xing said with a smile. They were all waiting for Xiao Wanru's news. After today, there would be no fifth Miss Xiao in Duke Xing's mansion. The fifth Miss Xiao, who had lost her reputation, had a secret meeting with a man and was drowned in the pond. This matter had nothing to do with Duke Xing's mansion. When the incident happened, the masters of Duke Xing's mansion happened to be absent, and it was carried out by the clansmen of the Xiao family. Even if Rui and great elder princess came forward, it would not matter. In the end, this matter would be left unsettled. Could it be fake that so many people had witnessed it? They saw the fifth Miss Xiao meeting with a man in secret, saw the fifth Miss Xiao escape into the lake, followed the water stains on the fifth Miss Xiao's clothes into the courtyard, and then saw the fifth Miss Xiao who had changed her clothes. All the signs showed that the person must be the fifth Miss Xiao. For the sake of the reputation of the women of the clan, it made sense that they punished the daughter of the clan who had ruined her reputation. Moreover, the most important thing was that this matter had nothing to do with Duke Xing's mansion at all. It was the clansmen who acted spontaneously. Few of the elders who were drunk were sober. In addition, someone secretly ignited the fire, so it was bound to be done. According to the time, Xiao Wanru should have washed up and changed her clothes. There was no difference between the wet clothes of taking a bath and the wet clothes of jumping into the water. Several servant girls in the courtyard over there had been ready to wet Xiao Wanru's clothes as soon as she changed her clothes, and then the clansmen of the Xiao family found her. "Madam! Madam! Madam!" Nanny Sheng, who had been staring in the direction of Xiao Wanru's courtyard through the window, suddenly screamed. "What's going on? Why are you panicking?" Madame of Duke Xing sat up straight in displeasure, stood up, and walked to the back window. "Is there a disturbance?" If there was a disturbance, it meant that the matter had been accomplished. She still had to sleep and rest here and could not be woken up by others. There were many things to do today. It was understandable that she, the madam in charge of internal affairs, had fallen asleep early. "Fire, fire, there is a fire." Looking in the direction of the fire, Nanny Xing broke out in a cold sweat. It seemed to be the courtyard of the wedding house that Madame had prepared for the first young master, which was the current residence of fifth Miss Xiao. If it really burned, Madame's painstaking efforts over the years would be gone. The furniture here had been slowly accumulated by Madame for many years. It could be said that it had been accumulated for about 10 years. Everything in it was also carefully selected by Madame. If it really burned, Madame would vomit blood. "What, there is a fire." At this time, Madame of Duke Xing also saw the fire. The thick fire rose to the sky, and it could be seen clearly even through the window. "There is a fire, madam. It seems to be the courtyard where Fifth Miss lives," Nanny Xing said in a crying voice. "There is a fire. There is a fire. How could it be?" Madame of Duke Xing's body shook twice and she almost fell down. She grabbed Nanny Xing's sleeve and almost gnashed her teeth to ask, "How could this happen?" I don't know." "Madam, go to put out the fire." Nanny Xing stammered. She had an intuition that something unexpected had happened. "Let's go and have a look." Madame of Duke Xing turned around and walked out. At this time, she had to go and have a look. The rising fire and the noisy voices all showed that the matter had become serious. In a panic, when she walked to the door, Madame of Duke Xing tripped over the threshold and fell on her back. Seeing that it was not good, Nanny Xing hurried over to help her up and shouted anxiously, Madam, don't panic. Maybe it is not that place. Let's go and have a look." "Let's go." Madame of Duke Xing took a deep breath, pushed Nanny Xing away, and stumbled out. The courtyard was full of her painstaking efforts. It was the best courtyard in the whole Duke Xing's mansion, even better than old Madame's. All the things used in it were expensive and decent. Some of them were selected from Infanta Qinghua's dowry. They were all very precious and could not be lost. Hearing that Madame of Duke Xing came out, several servant girls and old maids guarding outside hurriedly followed her and went to the place where the fire was rising. The elders of the Xiao family were all stunned on the spot. They looked at the courtyard in the fire in astonishment and were all stunned. Was the courtyard with the strong fire in front of them the courtyard where Fifth Miss Xiao lived? The one standing at the gate of the courtyard and anxiously asking the servants to splash water in was also the Fifth Miss Xiao, wasn't it? Her clothes were still the same clothes she wore during the day, which meant that the clothes worn by the woman they saw in the pavilion before, even the butterfly pattern on the cuffs was the same. However, the people of the Xiao family knew that this was not the same one. The woman jumped into the water, and her clothes were all wet. It had only been a short time. Even if her clothes were dried, it was impossible to dry them. However, the Fifth Miss Xiao in front of them was not only neat but also dry. She was completely clean, which was definitely not the messy appearance they had imagined. "It's not her. It's not her. It can't be her. Someone is wearing the same clothes as her. But this, how is it possible? How could someone be wearing the same clothes as the Fifth Miss? Ordinary people can't afford to wear such clothes." After the surprise, they were at a loss. So many people of the Xiao family came aggressively to catch the adulterer, but now they found that there was no adulterer to catch at all. The biggest suspect, Fifth Miss Xiao, could not be the person they were looking for. Then who was this person? She is wearing such gorgeous clothes, and she is wearing the same clothes as the Fifth Miss Xiao. Could she be a miss of the Xiao's mansion? Someone couldn't help guessing. It's possible. It's very possible. Immediately, many people responded. Not only did they realize that they were chasing after the wrong person, they were also being led by the nose. All of the clan elders felt ashamed and lost face. They had to find such a person to prove that they were clear-headed. The first miss is not here, but the second miss is. The third madam is said to be ill, and the third miss and the fourth miss are taking care of her. So the most likely person is. Someone took the method of elimination. After the elimination, they found that the second Miss Xiao, Xiao Jie, was the most suspicious. By the way, it must be him. The second Miss Xiao saw him talking to the fifth Miss Xiao before. They were in the pavilion. A woman suddenly thought of what had happened in the afternoon and suddenly realized. Yes, it must be him. It must be the second Miss Xiao. When we came here just now, did you notice that the water traces were gone? Someone raised a new question. Seeing the fire soaring into the sky, they all ran over involuntarily. They didn't know when the water traces on their clothes disappeared. A few people come and help put out the fire. Also, find a few people to go back to the original spot and follow the water trail. Follow the water trail to find the person. An elderly clan elder, who was still relatively clear-headed, made a decision on the spot. Everyone immediately agreed. The clansmen of the Shao clan were immediately divided into two groups. Most of them helped the people of Duke Xing's mansion to water the fire, and a few of them turned back to look for the person. Seeing such a group of people coming over, Xiao Wanru, who was standing in the crowd, slightly raised the corners of her mouth. She glanced at Wang Xingxue, who was caught. Her eyes were cold and sharp, like the edge of a knife, which made Wang Xingxue's face become more and more ugly. If someone took a closer look, they would find that he was trembling all over and almost collapsed to the ground. Chapter 451. At night, the towering fire shook the whole capital city. The mansion of Duke Xing's mansion was on the street. It was not long after nightfall, so most people were still awake. Those who lived nearby hurried to help put out the fire, and those who were far away stood on a high place to watch the fire. When they found out that it was the fire of Duke Xing's mansion, they were all surprised. But this kind of aristocratic family with more than 100 years of history had done a good job in fire prevention. Even if there were occasional sparks, it was impossible to burn so big and so fiercely. Such a fire was more like arson. Someone set fire to Duke Xing's mansion. This idea made people feel cold on their backs. In this situation, why did someone set fire to Duke Xing's mansion? What was their purpose? Was it really for Duke Xing? Master, the fire is really big. Xiao Xuanzi, who was standing on the top floor of the pavilion, shrank his neck. He had to admire the courage of this delicate second Miss Qin, now fifth Miss Xiao. She actually dared to set fire to her own residence, and she did it so blatantly. Even a man would not dare to do it, let alone an ordinary miss from an aristocratic family. Xiao Xuanzi felt that he definitely did not dare to do it, because it was pushing him to the public in a fair and square way. Of course, Xiao Xuanzi knew that he was a little eunuch and could not be compared with others, but Xiao Xuanzi felt that even if he was a eunuch, he was bolder than many men. In this regard, Xiao Xuanzi did not feel that he was inferior to other men at all. Most men were not as bold as him, nor as bold as fifth Miss Xiao. Chu Luqian stood in front of the window. The long gauze hanging in front of the window was hung up, so he could see the fiery red sky in the distance more clearly. The whole place was also bustling. There were people everywhere, and the sound of people could be faintly heard in the wind. This momentum was really great. He raised his handsome eyes with great interest. It seems that the courtyard of Duke Xing's mansion should be gone. I heard that this is the wedding house built by Madame of Duke Xing for her son, and it has been prepared for decades. Prepared for so long. What a pity. Now it's all gone. Xiao Xuanzi said it was a pity, but the smile on his face did not mean it was a pity at all. The loss of a courtyard that had been prepared for decades was not an ordinary 1 or 2 courtyards. It must be that all the good things had been sent to it. Now it was all gone. Just thinking about it made him happy. I don't know if Duke Xing will still be gentle now. In the imperial court, Duke Xing has a good temper. It's rare that I haven't seen Duke Xing get angry. Looking at the fire in the distance, Chu Luqian narrowed his eyes with a smile. He seemed to be in a good mood. Duke Xing was a good person with a good temper and attitude. Even if he was angry with something, he would slowly solve it. The emperor thought highly of him because of this. He thought that he was calm and capable of handling affairs. Originally, because of the estrangement between Ruyan Great Elder Princess and Duke Xing's mansion, and also because of the attitude of the current Duke Xing, the emperor no longer had any grudges. How could the emperor not approve of such a good-tempered person who was good at doing things? Guild Xing will suffer internal injuries from holding back. Xiao Xuanzi blinked his eyes and said meaningfully. Chu Luqian smiled slightly but didn't say anything. He continued to appreciate the fire outside. His position was extremely high, so he could see much farther than ordinary pavilions. Fifth Miss Xiao will be fine, right? Xiao Xuanzi followed him and watched in silence for a while, and said worriedly. Little girl is smart. Leave Duke Xing's mansion. Good idea. Chu Luqin said casually and lazily. Xiao Xuanzi didn't quite understand, but he was smart. He rolled his eyes and said, Master, if Fifth Miss Xiao leaves Duke Xing's mansion, what about her marriage? Fifth Miss Xiao's marriage was related to his master's marriage, so Xiao Xuanzi was very concerned. Originally, Xiao Wanru could not make the decision on her own about the marriage. If she really left Duke Xing's mansion now, there would be no elder to make the decision for her, so there would be no engagement. There is a jade pendant for her marriage, so there is no hurry. Chu Luqin said leisurely. His slender fingers gently flicked the window a few times. At this time, the fire outside the window had weakened a little. It seemed that it was slowly under control, or this place was almost burned. Everything that could be burned had been burned. There were some things left that couldn't be burned. Prince, the Empress Dowager asked you to wear that warm jade to nourish your body. If you give it to Fifth Miss Xiao like this, I'm afraid that the Empress Dowager won't like it. Xiao Xuanzi was worried. Why did he give that jade pendant to Fifth Miss Xiao? He could give her anything but this jade pendant. It seemed that he planned to let Fifth Miss Xiao show this jade pendant to the Empress Dowager. Wouldn't it make the Empress Dowager angry? What do you think Imperial Grandmother will do when she sees Zhuozhuo wearing this jade pendant? Chu Luqin said with a gentle smile. Xiao Xuanzi felt a toothache. He pulled a long face and carefully reminded him, Master, don't you think the Empress Dowager will be angry? Yes. Chu Luqin said with a smile. Then why did you give this jade pendant to Fifth Miss and let her wear it? Xiao Xuanzi was stunned. He really couldn't understand his master's thoughts. Wasn't it obvious that Fifth Miss would be hated by the Empress Dowager? Who in the world would be hated by the Empress Dowager? Didn't they want to die? Moreover, even if they wanted to die, no one dared to provoke the Empress Dowager. It was really difficult to guess what his master meant. I don't want to get married immediately, but I have to let Imperial Grandmother know about it. Imperial Grandmother will take back the jade pendant, but she will also discuss it with Rui and Great Elder Princess. Chu Luqin said very leisurely. So, although there was no engagement on the surface, it actually meant that the elders of the two families had approved it? Xiao Xuanzi figured it out and was immediately overjoyed. As for why it was Rui and Great Elder Princess instead of old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion, Xiao Xuanzi thought that since his master said so, it must be true. Moreover, this old madam was extremely partial. It was said that she treated Fifth Miss very badly. She had said in front of everyone that she hated Fifth Miss very much. Xiao Xuanzi felt that having such a grandmother was useless. It was excellent for the Empress Dowager to discuss Fifth Miss's marriage with Rui and Great Elder Princess. As for old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion, since she treated Fifth Miss badly, she should not interfere in Fifth Miss's marriage. Anyway, Fifth Miss had Rui and Great Elder Princess as her elder, so she had no elder. That's great, Rui and Great Elder Princess. Speaking of this, Xiao Xuanzi's eyes suddenly widened. He stared at the fire outside the window that burned half of the sky, and then he gasped in astonishment. He felt that he had really underestimated Fifth Miss. This Fifth Miss, who looked delicate and weak and could almost be blown down by the wind, was really the best match for his black-bellied master. Originally, old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion was the most legitimate elder of Fifth Miss. But what about after this? He was afraid that old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion could not act arbitrarily in the marriage of Fifth Miss. In Deputy Prime Minister's mansion, when Shiqi also looked at the fire. He stood on a rockery in his yard and looked at it. Deputy Prime Minister's mansion was close to Duke Xing's mansion and was next to Lin's mansion. From his position, he could see clearly. Not only did he see many people, but he also saw the girl in front of the crowd, who was surrounded by a few servants and retreated to one side. In such a large group of people, she was pushed to the edge. He also saw Madame of Duke Xing rushing over. As soon as she entered the door, she almost fainted on the ground. If it were not for the support of a few servants, she was afraid that she would have collapsed there. After that, Duke Xing came over and went up with a large group of people to help put out the fire. Such a big fire burned the whole yard. At first glance, it was obvious that someone deliberately set the fire. The news that Qin Wanru had now become Xiao Wanru, the biological daughter of the former heir of Duke Xing, had been widely spread in the capital city. Of course, the first miss of Qin's mansion also spread the news. It was said that the first miss was vicious and greedy. After learning Xiao Wanru's family background from her parents, she rushed to pretend to be Xiao Wanru. Fortunately, although Duke Xing's mansion thought that the evidence she took out was correct, they still had some doubts. Now they wanted old Madame to recognize her as her adopted granddaughter and then make a verification. After Xiao Wanru took out the real evidence and a group of witnesses, the first miss of Qin's mansion left in disgrace, and the fifth Miss Xiao could also officially recognize her ancestors. Duke Xing's mansion was very satisfied with the newly recognized fifth miss, so they hurriedly opened the ancestral hall to recognize her. Today, Duke Xing's mansion had been bustling for a long time during the day. It should be about recording the fifth Miss Xiao into the family tree. Unexpectedly, in the evening, someone secretly lit a fire here. This place should be the new courtyard of the fifth Miss Xiao, right? Coincidentally, third cousin. A sweet voice came from below. When Shichi lowered his head and looked at his cousin who walked out of the shadow with an unclear look in his eyes. Third cousin, what happened? Am I going to get a fever? Gu Shishu looked flustered. Her face was pale and her hair was slightly loose. At first glance, it could be seen that she had gone to bed. At this time, she was woken up by the noise. Her clothes were still a little messy, but even so, she still looked a little weak and pitiful, which made people feel sorry for her. However, this kind of weakness was a little too pretentious. Compared with Xiao Wanru's childish softness, she couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. Xiao Wanru's kind and childish temperament couldn't be compared with Gu Shishu at all. After seeing the bone-deep softness, the Gu Shishu in front of him was obviously not good enough. When Shichi suddenly felt very strange. He had always been a clear-minded person. Why didn't he see clearly that Gu Shishu's softness was so fake after so many years? In vain, he had treated her as his biological sister wholeheartedly, thinking that she was weak, kind-hearted, and would not play tricks. He looked at Gu Shishu like this, and so did his second brother. When he looked at others, he would always examine them carefully, but he trusted them wholeheartedly. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.